Takioto Kasuk is a young man who is a side character in a game called MangaCaped. He has an eccentric personality and is often called a comedian by the game's players, but behind all that he hides the wounds and trauma from his past. As a result, he appears to be experiencing mental pressure. Now a middle-aged man has reincarnated into Kasuk's body and begins living a new life there. He wants to change his fate from an unlucky side character into the strongest figure who surpasses the protagonist himself, while continuously trying to find his own romantic route. On a bright day, a large building in the style of a medieval castle stands in a modern fantasy city. The sun smiles, as if welcoming the morning and a new day. Birds sing merrily in the sky. In one of the buildings, visible from outside the window, a young man is standing in front of the bathroom mirror. His face is panicked to the extreme, upon seeing his own face. He pinches his own cheek, hoping that what he is seeing now is just a dream. However, he does not wake up, indicating that what he sees now is reality. And what makes him panic is that he knows full well that he has now become the friend of the main character from the game called MangaCaped. Speaking of games in their road genre, the one thing that cannot be missed is scenes that can make the heart race, appearing suddenly and sometimes illogically. And usually the main character in the game, one of them being MangaCaped, is a character who is extremely popular among women. He is even the strongest. However, unfortunately, he is not that main character, but merely a side character or NPC who is the friend of the main character and is always unlucky. To the point that the character was once slapped by the heroine in the game for saying something inappropriate, or even forced to do something for others. And the worst of all is that the character is not popular at all. He is Takioto Kasuk. Standing in the middle of the messy bedroom, Kasuk can only stay silent and think. No matter how long he thinks, he never finds a way to return to his old world. Not long after, he finds a book titled Beginner Magic Explanation that even a monkey can understand. Using and following the instructions in the book, Kasuk suddenly remembers about magic, and finally, he can use it after reading the book. A wide smile of happiness mixed with surprise appears on his face. Because this is the first time in his life he has used magic, even after he creates a round ball of light in his hand. With a clumsy face and movements, he starts examining the floating ball of light in his hand, thinking that the ball of light is floating because it is hung by a wire or something similar. After testing the magic, he remembers that the special ability possessed by the character Kasuk is that he is the only one who has the strongest raw magic power, or mana, compared to all the characters, and he also has a unique skill, the ability to control the red scarf he owns at will. Besides that, in the MangaCaped world there are monsters. In other words, he can go on adventures or explore dungeons scattered throughout the world. Besides that, he also clearly remembers how to use enhancement items and the skills possessed by each character from his previous life, and he will use them to his advantage. Realizing all of this, Kasuk finally realizes one important thing. If he combines the advantages possessed by Kasuk and the knowledge he has, then becoming the strongest is no longer impossible. Even so, he fully understands that the path to becoming the strongest is a path full of obstacles and steep cliffs, because he has to fight other factors such as the blonde elf girl, who is the most popular figure. With her empathetic nature, she becomes the main heroine in this game's story. She is Ludovine Mari and Jdura Trofel. Then there is the girl in Miko uniform, who is the character given an official cheat that is always prioritized in story development. She is also one of the top 3 characters. She is Mizumori Yukine. And the last is the main character, the strongest figure, and the character played by the players, the protagonist named Hijiri Iori. A grinning smile appears on Kasuk's face, not out of happiness, but out of challenge despite hesitation. He understands that the obstacles he must overcome are extremely strong, far too strong, even. However, he is confident that he will reach the same level as the 3 of them, even if he has to work harder, and the result awaiting him is becoming the strongest. That way he will enjoy life in this world to the fullest, and of course with the heroines, even though, because he is a side character, there is not a single romantic flag directed at him. At least that is what he thought when he first lived in this world. But in reality it is the opposite, because one day there is a moment, somehow and for some reason, he ends up hugging the elf girl, who is the main heroine in the game's story. Game eroge. Sometimes in this genre, there are many scenes that can be criticized by players either because of their illogic or because of envy for not being able to experience them directly. Besides that, among all the heroines, there are supporting characters who always have the unluckiest fate compared to the others. On a bright day, the blue-roofed academy building stands majestically. Sakura flowers fall, as if welcoming the students on this memorable day. On the sidewalk, Kasuke is seen walking there with his signature red scarf, but he looks gloomy and even sighs. He mutters to himself that he plans to obtain all the romantic flags he knows as quickly as possible, but the situation says otherwise. In the middle of his grumbling, he notices a young man standing alone, staring at the academy building from outside the fence. The young man is wearing the same academy uniform as Kasuke and has dark purple hair. Kasuke knows who the young man is. It is none other than the main character, Hijiri Iori. Seeing him, Kasuke immediately approaches and plays his role as the main character's friend. With an enthusiastic and cheerful tone, he greets Iori, which slightly surprises him with Kasuke's greeting. A wide smile appears on his face. Kasuke then introduces himself and with a proud tone explains to him that he will become the strongest in this Tsukuyami Magic Academy. A legendary game called Magical Explorer, or often abbreviated as MAGIX, offers or presents a student life filled with dungeon exploration experiences and strengthening one character. Simply put, it is a battle simulation game, or perhaps known as a game played by clicking. Just by making your own weapons, players can even become the greatest alchemist in the city. A game in the eroge genre with freedom provided to players at a level higher than other eroge games. A middle-aged man is seen sitting in his dark room, enjoying playing the game on his computer. He even already has plans for that night, such as making progress on his account, trying a new story route, and increasing his character's rank. He even makes notes on his computer about his progress, showing how serious he is. And all this time, he could only enjoy the game through the monitor. However, suddenly, somehow and for some reason, the middle-aged man suddenly wakes up and realizes he is in a room that is completely different from his own. The room is bright with sunlight coming in. The room even looks neat and clean, far from his own room. The first thing he sees is a mirror reflecting the body of a man, and just by glancing he already knows whose body it is, which instantly makes him freeze in shock before letting out a manly scream. On such a bright and calm day, even the birds perch romantically on small branches. The brown-haired young man looks uneasy and confused. His gaze keeps looking at his own body with wonder and hoping that all of this is not real. But no matter how many times he checks, he still recognizes whose body it actually is. The name of the body he is currently in is Takioto. Kasuke, one of the characters in the MAGIX game. Still feeling doubtful, he pinches his cheek again, quite hard, hoping he can wake up from this strange dream. But what happens is the pain from his own pinch, which makes him somewhat disappointed because this event is not a dream. He looks around. Although he knows that the MAGIX world is set in a modern fantasy background, he still feels slightly surprised when seeing it directly. Even the language, calendar, and time are the same as in his previous life. Almost nothing is different at all. Looking toward the window, he is curious and steps into the balcony area. There, his eyes widen in surprise and enthusiasm. He sees races that he could only see through the computer monitor screen before, but this time he sees them directly. Like animal races, unique-shaped pets, and even elf races that look alive like ordinary humans. He truly cannot believe that he can live in the game world he has been playing all this time. Walking back into the house, Kasuke is quite surprised that something like this could happen. But what surprises him even more is when he realizes that with his current condition, he can meet the heroines in the game directly. Understanding this makes him so excited, because he knows that in the MAGIX game there is a group of charming and beautiful heroines who will appear throughout the story. Besides that, he also likes many characters, but unfortunately most of them cannot be conquered in the normal way in the game. In other words, those characters do not have romantic routes. Kasuke's face immediately turns red when his thoughts wander everywhere upon realizing that this world is an eroge game world, and he can do things beyond the game itself. But when he glances back at the mirror and sees his own reflection, the wandering thoughts instantly shatter completely. That is because he knows that he is just a side character, an NPC. Perhaps the fate of NPCs in other game genres is safe, but it is very different in an eroge game world, where the treatment between the main character and side characters is vastly different, like heaven and earth. The main character is always prioritized in every aspect. Even in daily life, his abilities are truly beyond reason. All of that is usually known by eroge game players as the protagonist's advantage. In eroge games, the main character will easily get one moment and proceed to the next. Even with just a little kindness, he can make all the heroines fall for him very easily. On the other hand, with all that ease, the side characters or NPCs are truly very unlucky. For example, their unluckiness is that they are never popular, meaning no beauties will approach them. The reason is very simple. Players hate the idea of letting their favorite heroines be with or choose those NPC characters over the character played by the players, which ends up resulting in how side characters are treated now. For example, some side character friends of the main character will act eccentric all the time, but they will still be treated as low as trash by the heroines themselves as a result. Even in other games, side characters have to walk here and there to help the main character in the same two events. And of course there will never be a situation where a side character truly gets a romantic relationship with the heroines, no matter how hard they try. However, even so, Kasuk, who now understands the problem, and as a former eroge game enthusiast, he understands the player's feelings. Because he would definitely feel annoyed if the character he likes is taken by another character just like that. He even admits that if that happened, he would immediately jump into the forum and complain there all night, before then crying alone in his room until he falls asleep after searching for other players who have the same fate as him. A bit different, but that is indeed the reality. Kasuk immediately sits down with his knees on the floor, feeling disappointed in his own character, because being a side character in an eroge game seems to be something bad. Even so, Kasuk feels that complaining is useless. He looks back at his face in the mirror and mutters to himself that if he remembers correctly, at least Kasuk is not an evil side character. The character Takioto Kasuk himself is a side character who can be said to be a comedian who is always beside the main character. He will act like side characters in general and can even be predicted to play the role of an informant about the heroines, delivering the main character's messages to the heroines, and even likes to throw unfiltered eccentric jokes that come straight out of his mouth to the heroines with the result of being hated by them. Although Kasuk has a handsome face, with his idiot-like and perverted behavior, he ends up being hated by the other girls. Besides that, he is also full of bad luck in battles, and that, according to him, is very logical. Because what the players expect and want is the main character and strong heroines, plus the power and popularity of the heroines that determine the game's sales level. In other words, the heroines far surpass Kasuk's power, which ends up giving the stigma that male characters in eroge games are useless except for the main character. And it is not uncommon for Kasuk to be kicked out of the team because everyone wants their team filled with girls, and he does the same thing. Thinking about all of that makes his head hurt, but he also understands that worrying about all of that will not change anything. Therefore, he chooses to focus only on the future. Starting to walk around the family room, he finds several sheets of paper and a pamphlet lying on the table. The pamphlet reads, "Welcome to Tsukuyami Academy." Out of curiosity, he picks it up and reads it. He remembers that the main story in the MangaCapped game starts at the new student acceptance, so the current moment is the story before the main story begins. Only realizing that makes Kasuk so surprised and happy, because a moment like this he would never be able to experience in bonus content or any DLC, nor in the anime bundle. Therefore, this moment feels like a premium experience that can only be felt by him alone, which he has never experienced before. Thanks to this, he also feels that reincarnating into this world is not entirely bad. After reading the contents of the report paper, he realizes that there are still 2 weeks left before the new student acceptance ceremony. Besides that, he is already very familiar with Tsukuyami Academy because he has played the game several times before. Tsukuyami Magic Academy itself is an elite academy where the main character will enter together with him. Hearing the word magic makes Kasuk feel envious because he wants to use it too. His body instantly freezes. His brain is slow to respond to all the facts that he is now living in a fantasy world. Before then, Kasuk panics on his own about magic. He is confused about how to use magic itself, because in his previous life, he only needed to click the monitor screen to use magic. He then remembers that the character Kasuk is a character who can use magic from the beginning. But the problem now is that he does not know how to use magic itself. If this continues, then he will be expelled from the academy right after the new student acceptance ceremony. Because of this problem, he is sure that this body must have studied beforehand before passing the academy entrance exam, so there must be a clue in this house somewhere. With that thought, He starts going around every room to look for the clue. The first room he heads to is his own bedroom. The first thing he sees when stepping in there is a pile of exam papers with red grades on the study desk. Even Kasuk himself freezes there with an incredulous gaze upon seeing it. He even curses at himself for seeing such terrible exam grades. He even questions how he could pass the academy exam like this. He also finds his own notebook, filled only with useless, unclear doodles. That makes him sure that the character Kasuk did not listen to the lessons in class. But when he opens the latest notebook, he is surprised. Not because he does not believe it, but because he feels strange that only in his latest notebook does he find a notebook with normal content. He asks himself whether his heart has changed to study seriously. Because he does not find what he is looking for, he then searches other parts. Approaching the bookshelf, he finds his own diary notebook. Out of curiosity, he opens and reads it, only to make himself surprised and feel heavy-hearted. The contents of the diary state that a year ago both of his parents had passed away. Then his paternal grandfather also followed both of his parents. Now he has no connection with relatives from his mother's side. And the only remaining relative is from his father's side, namely his grandmother, who is now being treated in the hospital, and her condition is getting worse. The endless misfortune even surprises Kasuk himself. He did not expect the burden of the character Kasuk's life to be so heavy. But thanks to that, he understands that in the scene when the heroines talk about their families, only Kasuk puts on a sad facial expression, and it turns out that expression is not a developer's mistake, but there is a reason behind it. While putting the diary back and not reading it fully because it is too heavy, Kasuk mutters that he cannot believe the character Kasuk would have such a dark past. When about to move to another place, his gaze returns to his study desk when he finds something that catches his attention. There is a book with a picture of a magic circle and a monkey. The book is titled Beginner Magic Explanation that even a monkey can understand. Instead of feeling insulted, Kasuk smiles and feels that the book should be able to help him understand how to use magic. After taking several books related to magic, Kasuk then brings them to the small table and starts reading them one by one. From the book, he understands that both in the atmosphere itself and all living creatures under it, they all have mana flowing within them. Using this mana, they can create magic circles in order to use the miracle, while magicians need a lot of mana. The biggest difference between ordinary humans and a magician is the mana pool or mana capacity they possess. Understanding the explanation and how to use magic, Kasuk immediately practices it in the room. He approaches the window and closes the curtains to make the entire room dark. After it feels dark enough, he then walks to the middle of the room and stands there. He starts closing his eyes and begins to feel the flow of mana within his body. Because this is the first time he feels mana, Kasuk feels strange and weird himself. Because the mana flow he feels unusual and ticklish. When it feels right, Kasuk starts raising his hand and tries to manifest the magic in his mind. At the same time, he also says the name of the magic, which is light or light, and instantly a ball of light appears in his hand and makes the entire room bright. His eyes immediately sparkle with pride and happiness when he sees his first magic succeed. He is so happy that he even jumps around like a child who got his favorite toy. Still not satisfied, he then does another experiment by deactivating his magic and using it again. And yes, he can do it. The wide smile becomes even clearer on his face. He cannot believe he can activate and deactivate his magic at will. He understands that maybe this light magic is the most basic and easy magic in this world. But even so, for him, this magic is a new discovery, or a power that exceeds his own understanding. Regarding magic, Kasuk knows that out there are many types of magic in the ManhwaCapped world. Like attack-type magic, defense, restoration, support magic, secret magic, or hereditary family magic, even arrow magic. Therefore, he wants to try all those types of magic. If it is about the amount of mana, then Kasuk might be one of the extraordinary characters, considering he has abundant innate mana compared to other characters. Therefore, he might be a side character, but depending on how much effort he puts in, he might become someone who somehow is a lucky side character. Opening the curtains again, he looks outside. If he becomes strong, then maybe he can try to conquer dungeons. If talking about the ManhwaCapped game world, then dungeon is something that cannot be separated. Using teleportation magic, players can be moved to around 10 dungeons scattered throughout the world. Because he feels strange, he starts thinking about it again. He feels there is a reason why the character Kasuk in the story does not develop, and instead becomes weak despite having advantages. Then he realizes that he has knowledge about the MangaCaped game. He even knows what he really needs right now to become the strongest is a possibility. A possibility that can be obtained through cheat items and skills. His efforts playing this game for weeks have now become useful because he knows how to obtain all of that. He feels that the combination of himself and the character Kasuk is the perfect combination. Himself with his knowledge and Kasuk with his abundant mana. With that combination, he feels he can do something extraordinary. And now he is even more confident that he can become the strongest in this world. But of course the path to becoming the strongest will not be as easy as thought. He will definitely encounter mountains and steep ravines. Considering his opponents are the heroines with their high popularity and equally high power. Those heroines get official cheats directly from the developer. But from all of that, there is one more character who becomes his toughest opponent. That is the protagonist, the main character, Hijiri Iori. He is at a level far different from others. He can even become strong enough to defeat the Demon King alone. Kasuk grins and his body trembles, not out of fear, but out of feeling challenged. There is adrenaline triggered by that challenge. Therefore he has made up his mind that he will become the strongest, so he can go to dungeons and visit other places freely. Because of that adrenaline, he feels excited and impatient to immediately attend the new student acceptance ceremony. Just thinking about it, his happiness instantly shatters when he realizes about his school fees. He starts panicking again because he remembers from his diary that he is in a very difficult financial situation. Suddenly the sound of the doorbell from the front door is heard. Hearing that makes Kasuk confused and asks who it is. But there is no reply from the intercom, and the doorbell sound is still heard. Kasuk hurriedly and somewhat panicked immediately heads to the front door. For a moment after opening the door, there is a feeling of longing for his deceased parents. Therefore, for a moment before he stops his words, Kasuk calls out to his mother, thinking that the one pressing the bell is them, but in reality it is someone else. In front of him stands a beautiful young woman with long dark purple hair and an official office uniform. Seeing that figure, Kasuk becomes extremely shocked and his cheeks turn red when he sees her. He knows full well that the woman is one of the important characters from the MangaCaped game story. She is Hanamura Marino, the headmistress of Tsukuyami Academy. Kasuk is confused and does not know what to answer because he also does not know why, of all characters, it has to be her who comes to his house. He also does not know the reason for her visit to his house. With a friendly and gentle tone, Marino smiles and asks to confirm that the person in front of her now is Kasuk. With a motherly tone, she suddenly invites Kasuk to eat together, an invitation that comes out of nowhere, without any signs at all, which of course surprises Kasuk. Hanamura Marino, a young woman with a beautiful face, is a leader in the world of magic and also the headmistress of the elite Tsukuyami Academy. In the game's story, she sometimes appears in front of the main character and his friends to give useful advice. But this time, that important character suddenly appears in front of Kasuk out of nowhere. On the other hand, seeing Kasuk staring at her with his mouth agape and blushing cheeks makes Marino surprised, so she immediately apologizes to him. She just realizes that Kasuk must be shocked because someone he doesn't know suddenly visits and invites him out to eat together. Without feeling embarrassed, Marino immediately bows her body and introduces herself. Seeing such an important figure with high status bowing to him makes Kasuk panic half to death. He quickly stops her and asks her to raise her head while explaining that he already knows Marino very well, remembering that she is an influential person. In Eroge genre games, there are many scenes that appear illogically and suddenly. Even in games like that, those scenes can feel too excessive. Perhaps in his opinion, it is done to make it easier for the developer to insert their typical ero scenes at will. For example, in some similar genre games, the protagonist lives alone with his father, then his neighbor only has female family members. And then with their brilliant idea they appear and finally exchange their children. A strange, eccentric, and definitely illogical idea, but it sells in this genre's game market, until finally the protagonist even makes his own harem there. After accepting Marino's invitation, Kasuk returns to his room and starts getting ready. He puts on his best clothes with a happy smile on his face, because he feels he has the chance for a date with one of his favorite characters. Normally, he should not agree to an invitation from someone he doesn't know or has never met before. However, remembering that this is the MangaCaped game world he once played, especially since he already knows the game well, Of course he cannot refuse Marino's invitation. After finishing dressing, he comes out and approaches Marino, who is waiting for him in the living room. Seeing Kusuk already ready, Marino smiles and invites him to leave right away. Time passes. The bustling city that decorates the streets is visible. The two of them finally arrive at their destination, but Marino looks somewhat sad and feels guilty. With her guilty tone, she apologizes to Kusuk because she could only make a reservation at a place like this. Hearing the apology makes Kusuk freeze in surprise. Crazy. How could she say that so innocently when the chosen restaurant looks so sparkling everywhere and very elegant? Even a blind beggar would be left gaping if they were there. Even when the two of them sit down, there are already two waiters waiting patiently and ready to serve them. It really is different when you're rich. However, Kusuk does not want to make Marino sad. He immediately changes his extremely surprised facial expression to one of joy and a smile, while saying that he is very happy because Marino chose such an extraordinary place. And this unlucky character successfully makes Marino smile happily and tell him that she is also grateful Kusuk feels that way. Not long after they order their food, the waiters from earlier immediately return and serve their food on the table. It is as if the food magically appears from the chef's magic. Just looking at the food already makes Kusuk hesitant. Its appearance is so luxurious and shining in his completely ordinary eyes. He can even guess that the price of one meal is equivalent to his monthly salary in his previous life. Taking the knife and fork, he starts cutting and stabbing the meat. Just lifting it a little already shows how perfectly the food is prepared. The melting fat makes the meat extremely appetizing. Putting it into his mouth makes Kusuk extremely surprised, as if a lightning bolt strikes his body. It is so delicious that Kusuk even shudders before his tears of happiness start flowing. He even mutters about the extraordinary taste of the food and compares the price of the meal to the UMR salary in his previous life. Hearing his mutter makes Marino smile in confusion and comment that Kusuk is saying something interesting. Marino then comments that seeing Kusuk enjoying his food so much makes Marino herself feel hungry too, so she starts taking her knife and fork. Kusuk also nods happily and comments that the taste is so vastly different from the food he usually eats. Marino then begins moving her knife and fork elegantly and authoritatively, showing that she really is a high-class person. Even when putting the food into her mouth, she remains dignified, and yes, in his heart, Kusuk truly praises Marino's elegant attitude, and that makes his heart fall for her even more. When she swallows the food, Marino then makes a childlike facial expression as she feels that the food is truly delicious. Does that reduce Kusuk's interest in her? Of course not. In fact, it makes Kusuk even more interested because he can see a new side of Marino, who often appears dignified. Marino herself is one of the characters who defines the phrase beauty not bound by age itself, and things like this often appear in eroge genre games. As seen, Marino is already an adult, but her appearance still looks so young. That makes Kusuk remember his past when he realized that the character Marino is one of the characters who cannot be conquered by the protagonist in the game. He was so shocked. He even wrote several letters to the game's CS like a madman, letters containing questions, and his hope that this character Marino could be made conquerable in the game. But in the end, all his efforts were in vain, and the character Marino remained unconquerable. But this time he can interact with her directly, and that makes him very happy. He is so happy that Kusuk does not realize he is smiling to himself while staring at Marino. On the other hand, Marino herself is slightly surprised and confused by his strange behavior. Because of that, Marino awkwardly asks him whether there is something on her face that makes Kusuk smile like that. The question is like a slap of reality that makes Kusuk immediately snap out of his thoughts. He quickly apologizes to her. The question also makes Kusuk affirm to himself that Marino in front of him is no longer just a character, avatar, or two-dimensional figure, but a real human being. Because of that, he feels he must be more careful. He then explains to her that Marino is a very famous person, so he is just too happy and excited to be able to eat together like this. Hearing that makes Marino slightly surprised and also happy. When their meal is finished and the waiters take their empty plates, Marino suddenly holds Kusuk's hand gently. Of course, that makes Kusuk extremely surprised, and his face turns red because he did not expect her to do something so unpredictable. But his surprise is immediately diverted by the sensation of her soft hand touching his. Marino leans slightly forward, and while smiling with her gentle tone, she asks Kusuk not to feel nervous because from now on their relationship will become closer. That statement makes Kasuk's heart beat faster and his face redden. A statement that could make someone misunderstand but also happy. And yes, this unlucky Kasuk also misunderstands, thinking that Marino's statement just now has given him a green flag in the romantic relationship he has longed for. And yes, his thoughts wander everywhere again until Kasuk is smiling to himself once more with his red face. And of course that makes Marino confused again, because she often sees Kasuk acting in ways that confuse her. Marino finally pouts, and with an angry but cute tone asks Kasuk whether he is listening to her. Kasuk once again snaps out of his fantasy and apologizes. On the other hand, Marino only snorts cutely while still angry but still holding his hand. She then tells him with a serious face that she will shorten her sentence, that from now on Kasuk will become her child. Hearing that makes Kasuk's face even redder, but he is also extremely shocked. He even admits that this development is even crazier than his own imagination. Marino, while still holding his hand, quickly stands up when she sees Kasuk's extremely shocked facial expression and explains that the two of them still have a blood relationship because Kasuk's mother and she are cousins. Hearing the explanation calms his shock, but he is still surprised because he just learned there is such a background in the story. Marino then sits back down and her serious facial expression changes to sad. She explains that she has heard about all the tragedies that have befallen Kasuk so far. She apologizes for not discussing this with Kasuk, but she wants to save Kasuk from this heavy situation as quickly as possible. Hearing that makes Kasuk feel happy, especially since Marino is still as kind as she is in the game. Because of that, he thanks her for her concern. Suddenly, Marino's previously sad facial expression instantly changes to happy, and she says that her house is very close to Tsukuyami Academy, which is why Kasuk and she will live together there. Hearing that again makes Kasuk surprised, because the story development has gone crazy again. But this time he feels it is a questionable option, remembering that in the story route he and Iori will live in the dormitory together, and their rooms are even next to each other. Because of that, he asks in a surprised tone, wouldn't he be staying in the academy dormitory? Marino explains while smiling that in her house only she and her daughter live there, so they still have rooms left for Kasuk to use. Besides that, her daughter has also agreed to this, so Kasuk does not need to worry about anything there. Hearing about Marino's daughter makes Kasuk surprised, and in a somewhat excited tone he asks whether Marino's daughter is Hatsumi. Hearing Kasuk's accurate guess makes Marino surprised and happy too. She then asks whether Kasuk already knows her. Kasuk smiles awkwardly and explains that her daughter is just as famous as Marino. Hatsumi, or full name Hanamura Hatsumi, is Marino's daughter. She works as a teacher at the academy. Unlike her mother, who has long hair, she has shoulder-length short hair with the same hair color as her mother. In the game's story, Hatsumi often appears to give important skills to the protagonist, Iori. Understanding that this is a new story route that would never exist in the game itself makes Kasuk excited and impatient to experience that story route. However, he also understands that at this point most of the important scenes in the game will most likely not happen, because he is not staying in the dormitory with the protagonist. He realizes that this is a bad situation, even though he has decided to live freely. If he changes the main story route and even overhauls the main story this much, then he will no longer be able to predict what will happen in the future. If that happens, he cannot even imagine what effects will be caused by every choice he makes. He wants everything to stay the same so he can fully utilize the knowledge he has. Therefore, he wants to avoid such big changes as much as possible. After thinking for a moment, he feels he can wait longer before he truly starts living freely. However, even so, being able to live together with two beautiful women, Marino and Hatsumi, is a tempting option. The clash between the two difficult choices is now warring inside his own head, to the point that it makes Kasuk fall silent and think hard there. On the other hand, Marino, who sees his reaction, only laughs lightly and comments that it seems discussing moving house and living together with them is too soon for Kasuk. She then takes out a piece of dormitory registration form paper. She then explains that the two of them still have some time until Kasuk does the registration to stay in the dormitory. Therefore, she suggests to Kasuk to try living with them for a while. Hearing the suggestion makes Kasuk feel happy, and he thinks it is a good suggestion. He then accepts the suggestion happily because it has helped him out of the difficult choice earlier. Since they have agreed, Marino then smiles and takes out her phone. She then asks Kasuk to inform her when Kasuk is ready to try living with them and invites him to exchange contacts. Hearing that, Kasuk is slightly startled. He then, with a smile and awkward tone, explains that actually he does not have a phone. In his heart, he admits that he has searched for his phone in every corner of the rooms in his house, but he did not find a phone at all. On the other hand, Marino, who hears it, becomes very surprised and even looks sad in her surprise. She suddenly cries, which also surprises Kasuk and confuses him with her tears. While crying, Marino comments that she heard that Kasuk received a call from both of his parents right before the two of them were killed by monsters. She understands because that call makes Kasuk feel traumatized by phones. Hearing that instead makes Kasuk panic on his own. He does not even remember that background, and it makes him feel strange. But if matched again with the main story flow, then everything makes sense. He now knows that perhaps that is also the reason why the character Kasuk never answers the protagonist's calls, and Kasuk there always reasons that he overslept. Besides that, that background also explains why the character Kasuk is so obsessed and full of anger when facing monsters and demons. He initially thought that the character Kasuk was just a weird and idiot character because of his behavior. However, after thinking about it, with a background like this, the character Kasuk, who sometimes appears enthusiastic, is only covering up his past from his friends. And actually he is experiencing mental pressure. Perhaps even more than that, Kasuk starts to feel his heart heavy. He admits that the more he learns about this character Kasuk's past, the more he knows how unfortunate he is. Because of that, he hopes he can do something to improve his condition. Kasuk then tells Marino in a happy tone that Marino does not need to worry about him. While smiling widely, he explains again that he does not have a phone because he has canceled or terminated his phone rental contract, and he now is no longer afraid of phones. Hearing that, Marino is slightly doubtful. To prove it, Kasuk then borrows Marino's phone and shows it by holding it casually. Seeing that makes Marino smile again and praise Kasuk for overcoming his trauma well. On the other hand, Kasuk actually did not experience that trauma, but he feels that Marino's smile is more than anything. After saying that, Marino then stands up enthusiastically and immediately holds Kasuk's arm happily. She then invites Kasuk to buy a new phone for him together and asks him to consider it as a gift for Kasuk upon joining their family. Although feeling a little embarrassed, in the end he accepts it and goes together to the phone store. Together with the waiter who follows the two of them, they start looking at the latest phone models. Although mostly Kasuk just stays silent and lets Marino choose, and yes, like rich people in general, Marino does not hesitate in choosing a phone as if the displayed prices mean nothing. After all those surprising things, they finally go home while the sun is still high. Kasuk thanks her and tells her that he is very happy today. Marino, who is still sitting in the driver's seat of her black car, smiles and comments that actually she really wants to stay with Kasuk, but unfortunately she still has a business trip now. Kasuk nods understandingly and wishes her the best. When Marino is about to leave, he immediately stops her when he realizes something. He reaches into his pocket and takes out an envelope while saying that this is Kasuk's living expenses for the time being, and with this amount Kasuk should be able to last a week. When the envelope is received and reaches Kasuk's hand, he is already surprised by how heavy it is compared to his guess. And yes, when opened, the contents are a very thick wad of money, and that makes Kasuk even more surprised. Seeing the reaction makes Marino slightly panic and think that the money she gave is still not enough. She even does not hesitate to offer to give her credit card to Kasuk. That instead makes Kasuk even more panicked, and he immediately refuses by saying that with this money she gave he can already live for a full year. Even though he has said that, Marino still looks worried and says that clearly that much is still not enough, but she also asks Kasuk to inform her when it runs out. She even pleads with him, showing how worried she is about Kasuk. Kasuk nods and sees her off. In his heart he mutters that Marino really has no sense of worry about money. He falls silent again, and his eyes return to the wad of money in his hand. He truly cannot comment anything about the money. However, what surprises him the most is about the character Kasuk. It turns out the Takioto family has a blood relationship with the Hanamura family. The Hanamura family itself is a very influential family in the world of magic, politics, and industry. Although he himself feels worried about this story route change, with this it will also change the pace of development toward his goal of becoming the strongest. He feels that it would be a shame to use the money just for living, but he has another idea for using this much money so he can become stronger. Many options appear in his head, such as weapons, defense items, equipment, or even rare items. All the data he collected from the web or directly through the game will not appear in this world. Because of that, he can now only rely on his own knowledge, and that makes him even more excited. With the remaining 2 weeks before the new student acceptance ceremony is held at the academy, he will continue training. And afterward, the various scenes in the game will begin, and he will take all those events to make himself even stronger. And to do all that, he must ensure his own strength. Wakoku is the name of the country where Kasuk currently lives, and is also one of the many countries in the MangaCaps world. As a note, Wakoku itself means the Japanese country and was usually used in ancient China, and is still used now but not often. This country has references to the original modern Japan, even down to the currency, seasons, and even small things like convenience stores. They are all the same. The main difference is only in the people who live there, where in the MangaCaps world there are various races and developments in magic technology. After deciding all that, Kasuk then heads to the nearest convenience store, and there he is greeted by a cat-eared girl. After entering and searching for the item he is looking for, he finally finds it. Yes, cup or glass-shaped instant ramen. Finding it, he immediately grabs a basket and fills it full with the instant ramen and takes it straight to the cashier. Even the cat girl is surprised seeing Kasuk only buying an abnormal amount of instant ramen. He intends to stock up on instant ramen at home, so he can focus on practicing magic without worrying about running out of food during his training. He is so enthusiastic about his magic training session, remembering that previously he managed to use the most beginner magic, light or light. This time's training, he wants to try different magic, and when talking about magic, the magic that comes to mind is emission type or attack magic. Or more precisely, magic that is very striking and becomes one of the attractions of magic battles. Even the dream of fantasy game players to try it. There are various types of attack magic in the MangaCaps world. Even the magic used by the heroines in this game world has made the players of this MangaCaps game captivated to try it. And one of them is himself, of course. Although he really wants to try it, he is also self-aware that using very striking magic would definitely be impossible to do right now. Therefore, his magic training session will start with something simple as usual. But even so, he is very confident that he will reach that point no matter what. Upon arriving home, he immediately goes to the backyard and brings the previous magic explanation book. His fingers focus on opening every page of the book, looking for magic that seems easy to try and practice. His finger stops when he sees an explanation of how to use water magic. He feels that the water magic is suitable to start this training of his. He grins full of confidence. He remembers about his light magic and thinks that this water magic will also be easy like when he used light magic too. He then takes an empty can and places it on a piece of wood as his target, stepping back a few steps from his target. He then stands there. He then repeats what he did when using light magic. Closing his eyes, he starts to feel the mana inside his body. He keeps focusing himself and tries to control the mana inside him. Raising his hand and pointing toward his target, he starts imagining what kind of magic he will use. And boom. At least that is what Kasuk imagines, because in reality there is no explosion at all. It is even silent. Too silent even. He has surprised himself. He has already imagined and felt the mana being released, but nothing happens. He then looks at his own finger, thinking maybe his finger is jammed or something. But suddenly a small-sized water fountain comes out from his finger, making him shout in surprise and pride at the same time. He is so proud seeing the very small water fountain that he even jumps around like a kid who got a two-horned beetle. He is really making a fuss by himself because of the water coming out from his finger. Even so, he feels that water that small is suitable to reduce the water bill at home and is also suitable for watering the plants at home. Now not only he is happy, but his yard is happy too. He raises both hands and shouts that this water magic is very easy to use and useful, but that joy does not last long. When he realizes the initial goal of practicing magic, he immediately scolds himself because the water magic he released is way too small. He knows that the magic he uses should be attack magic, but in reality the magic that comes out is like water for watering plants and even much smaller in volume. Because of that he panics by himself because he has exerted all his strength, but the result is still minimal. He tries to think positively and thinks maybe he does not have compatibility with the water element. He opens the book again while continuously praying in his heart to find an element that suits him. He then keeps trying various simple magic from various elements like fire, wind, earth, light, even up to darkness. The result is, yes, Kasuk keeps not giving up even though tears of defeat are already flowing heavily from his eyes. He still keeps thinking positively, or maybe more precisely is already overwhelmed, and thinks that if he cannot use simple magic, maybe he can use legendary magic. Yeah, his brain is already short-circuited. In the end, it can be guessed, he collapses in resignation on the floor of his backyard, giving up on his magic training. He smiles bitterly at himself. He understands that this is a serious problem, because he does not have even a single magic that he can perform with full power when fighting later. Even with his current situation, clearing a dungeon feels like a wish to end his own story, and also his dream of becoming the strongest figure like a child's joke. Unfortunately, the ManhwaCapped world also has a dark theme, so he might not even be able to last 10 minutes. But after all the things that make him pessimistic, Kasuk just remembers that Takioto Kasuk is actually a relatively useful character. Most ManhwaCapped game players still keep him in their team only until the middle of the story. Actually, the abilities of the character Kasuk are not always consistent. Even though he has a large mana capacity, he really does not have compatibility with striking magic like attack-type magic. Therefore, the emission magic he hoped for might fail to be obtained. Unless used in a certain way, then the situation will reverse. Even a veteran ManhwaCapped game player can bring out the true potential of the character Kasuk. Because of that, he feels he must start using that method and start from the way the character Kasuk dresses as his default. That is none other than his signature red scarf. He needs his red scarf to bring out his good side. The scarf is made of material that can channel mana and flow within it. That is also explained in the character biography of Kasuk in the limited edition booklet. Back inside the house and grabbing his phone, Kasuk sits back down on the floor of the backyard. He starts using his phone to search for the scarf item in an online store. He knows that searching for the red scarf manually will take a lot of time and will definitely be difficult. Therefore, it will be better and faster to order it himself, with a length enough to fold and where around his neck is already sufficient. He then types the name of the scarf and its material type in the search column. When he presses the search button, the most solid option immediately appears. But the price is fantastically expensive. Kasuk even curses at the price, which he thinks is crazy. That price is even more than the thick wad of money Marino gave him earlier would not be enough to pay for it. He then starts scrolling the screen again, trying to find the cheapest one. He then finds a more affordable price, and the scarf is made of material called arachne thread. The price is affordable, and the color is red too. Kasuk immediately hits buy. He even buys 2 for backup. A notification appears and informs that the item will arrive 1 hour later. Seeing that notification makes Kasuk surprised and happy at the same time, because this is the first time he has shopped online at this speed. He then remembers that based on the information he read, there are 2 ways to strengthen or increase the amount of mana capacity. He is quite surprised by the first way because he just learned it, so he wants to try it immediately. The real training session will begin when the ordered scarf package arrives in his hands. Several hours later, Kasuk finally receives his package, and then he changes his clothes into sportswear. He then puts on his bright red scarf and starts running to the city park to begin training. On the way, he realizes that the scarf does feel disturbing to him while moving. On the other hand, the people in the park cannot help but look at him because of his very striking red scarf. Kasuk can even hear their whispers about his striking appearance, especially the kid who loudly tells his mother that there is a weird person wearing a red scarf. Realizing that what they are talking about is himself, Kasuk immediately runs to find a quieter place. When he finds a sufficiently quiet place, he starts his training. He then begins by activating strengthening magic on his own body and starts running as hard and as fast as possible. His movements are truly faster than a normal human, and that is thanks to his strengthening magic. Most of the uses of the character Kasuk is the use of his large amount of mana for physical strengthening and magic strengthening. The goal of his training right now is to increase his level and obtain new skills from his level. Besides that, at the same time, increase the amount of his mana capacity. Now back to the previous topic regarding the 2 ways to increase someone's mana. The first way is by increasing the level, that is by collecting magic particles, or more often known as EXP or experience points. And the second way is by continuously using magic until the user runs out of mana. Therefore, he will continue using the second way by continuously using strengthening magic on his body while running and aiming to consume as much mana as possible. He then uses other strengthening magic on his red scarf and strengthens it to become as hard as iron. When he tries it and knocks on the scarf, he is quite surprised because his scarf is now truly as hard as iron. He understands that if he succeeds in raising his level, then he can strengthen other magic that has other elements. Therefore, he feels impatient to be able to try it. No matter how many minutes he has been running since earlier while continuously using his strengthening magic, he is even surprised himself why he does not experience any signs of running out of mana. He even lets out a long sigh, not from tiredness but from frustration. But he does not give up and keeps pushing himself harder. He then increases the difficulty of the strengthening magic on his scarf. Now his scarf can move like his own arm. The right side of the scarf is his third hand, while the left side of the scarf is his fourth hand. This is one of the original skills of Kasuk and is the key to his close-range fighting style. In the game's story, the character Kasuk cannot use the skill to turn his scarf into additional arms at the beginning of the story, but for some reason in the middle of the story, he suddenly can use it. For now, Kasuk intends to keep adding this skill into his training, so he can master it further as quickly as possible. It would be better if he can master it before he moves to the Hanamura family residence. He keeps running, strengthening his body with magic, while strengthening his scarf and moving it to grab the bottle he uses as his target. He feels this training of his is like killing two birds with one stone, which means very effective. He then continues his training full of enthusiasm. Time passes quickly, the sun starts to set, and the birds also start returning to their nests. Kasuk is seen smiling with sweat on his face, not tired, not happy either, but frustrated and confused at the same time. He feels that during the hours he has been running earlier, he does not feel any signs of running out of mana at all. He even shouts in frustration because he cannot find his mana depletion point. Moreover, he does not even know where his current location is. He is sure there is something wrong with his body. Now he feels this training of his is very ineffective because he cannot know the limit of his mana. Because it is already evening, he decides to just go home and think about his training again. Upon arriving home, the day is already night. Kasuk is not tired at all. He is even still using his strengthening magic and using his scarf as additional arms. His main hands are holding a book, and his scarf is doing other things like preparing instant ramen and holding another book. He keeps searching for the best way to increase his mana capacity, but he finds another fact that to know someone's mana capacity is by using a magic tool to see one's own status. He understands that this way will be easier to solve his current problem, but he is also quite surprised because with that method one can also know about hidden status on someone. Hidden status itself usually appears at every certain level, like giving additional points to stamina, magic, resistance, scouting, and concealment. At least that is what is explained by the book he reads. Even so, in general it does depend on the level, but there are still many things that are unknown. Interestingly, magic is not something that is truly documented as a study in this world, even though this era already has advanced technology. Because he is full of questions and unknowns, Kasuk feels he wants to hear direct answers and opinions from someone who can use magic rather than focusing only on books. He has one candidate person he can ask, that is Marino. Marino herself is someone who is an expert among other experts. There are even rumors that she single-handedly slaughtered S-rank monsters. He does admit that there is no better magic teacher than her, but asking the headmistress of the elite Tsukuyumi Academy to teach him would attract too much attention from others. Besides that, he is also sure Marino is a very busy person. Because of his own excitement, the glass he uses slips from his scarf and shatters. Realizing that, Kasuk finally gives up on asking for Marino's help and chooses to try harder with just a relaxed step. Time passes and several days have gone by. Kasuk keeps repeating the same training continuously. But no matter how hard and how much training he does, he still cannot find the limit of his mana. He feels as if he is only running in the same spot without ever getting even the slightest progress. He even realizes that without knowledge of the game, he might have gotten further on the path to becoming the strongest. When he rests while drinking an energy drink, the liquid accidentally spills a little onto his scarf. Realizing that he instead makes a fuss and panics by himself because his expensive scarf accidentally gets dirty because of him. Not long after, the voice of a familiar person greets Kasuk with a happy and gentle tone. Yes, it is Marino. She walks over to Kasuk, and with a smile on her face, she explains that she appeared and hurried here because she felt a large amount of mana. She then guesses whether Kasuk is practicing magic, and that makes her very proud of him. On the other hand, seeing the figure he has been hoping to become his teacher suddenly appear here makes him surprised. He then asks, "Isn't Marino currently on a business trip?" With a wide smile on her face, Marino explains that she only wants to see Kasuk as soon as possible. So she finished her work as quickly as possible and came home earlier. She then invites Kasuk to spend their time together, hearing that Kasuk feels this is his chance. Without thinking long, he then calls her full of enthusiasm and hope. Suddenly, he immediately bows his body all the way to the ground and begs her to stay with him. Hearing and seeing that makes Marino herself surprised. For a moment, she freezes in shock before then letting out her surprised shout because Kasuk's words make her misunderstand. In the end, after explaining his intention, Marino's face turns red. She feels embarrassed herself, but also a bit annoyed with his sentence that could be misunderstood. She then answers that if Kasuk wants her to stay here for his magic training, then she will gladly help him. Hearing that makes Kasuk excited. He then, with a formal tone and a smile on his face, thanks Marino and says that Marino's presence here will definitely be an honor for him. Hearing that, Marino immediately flicks Kasuk's forehead while pouting. She orders Kasuk to stop with his formal attitude toward her, especially since the two of them are now family. Kasuk can only agree while receiving the flick. Marino then asks about what kind of training Kasuk has been doing all this time. Kasuk innocently explains that right now he is training to move his scarf freely while he is running. Besides that, he also keeps strengthening his body even when he is not training. Just hearing that is already enough to make Marino surprised, amazed, and disbelieving at the same time. She asks in a surprised tone whether Kasuk's mana can sustain all that extra hard training. Kasuk laughs awkwardly and answers that actually his mana does not feel reduced at all. He can even do all that for 10 hours continuously very easily. Even though this time his target is to do it for 24 hours non-stop. Marino's eyes widen and her eyebrows furrow, trying to believe that unreasonable thing. Even though she tries to look calm, her tone is not. Marino then explains that the idea Kasuk uses to keep using strengthening magic continuously and use it in various things is a good thing. Besides that, using a lot of magic will also help increase his mana capacity, so according to her, Kasuk already has a good idea. Kasuk smiles hearing it and feels relieved because the information he got from the book turns out to be correct. Marino's attention then shifts to the red scarf Kasuk is wearing. She then asks permission from him to touch the scarf. Kasuk, without objection, gives one side of the scarf to Marino. For a moment, she looks hesitant when about to touch it. He understands that it depends on the mana capacity flowed into the mana-conductive material that will affect the outside of the scarf. And when her finger touches it, just as he predicted, something stinging is suddenly felt by Marino until she herself lets out a strange sound. She immediately falls silent in surprise and admiration. She even smiles in amazement and comments that Kasuk's strengthening magic and mana capacity might have already surpassed hers. Hearing that, Kasuk pretends to panic and tries to brush off her words, but actually he is not too surprised. In fact, he intends to become stronger than Marino herself if he wants to become the strongest. For the character Kasuk, his mana capacity is the highest thing compared to his other stats. His mana capacity is truly different from ordinary people. His capacity even exceeds twice that of the heroines, who often release their strongest magic non-stop. But in the game's story, the character Kasuk is really weird because in every action when fighting, he will always end up running out of mana. He feels that the skill of using his scarf as additional arms is the reason the character Kasuk runs out of mana faster. Kasuk then tells Marino that he will start running again. He also asks her to watch whether he is doing it correctly. Marino accepts his request, and then she brings out a hologram keyboard and attaches a camera magic to Kasuk. That way they can communicate while monitoring his movements from afar, and with Marino's signal, Kasuk starts running and doing the training he has been doing all this time. Running fast using strengthening magic on his body, then using his scarf to catch the bottle and using the other scarf to grip a pole. He then uses the scarf gripping the pole to change the direction of his body and then throws the can he is holding at a tree quite hard. Seeing all those fast movements and precise mana control makes Marino clap and praise him. She then says that Kasuk is amazing. She also tells him that if Kasuk can master this skill, then this skill will be useful in the upcoming battles. Hearing that makes Kasuk smile and chuckle happily. But he feels confused himself because all this time he has been using the skill of turning the scarf into additional arms, yet he still does not feel tired at all. Then what makes the character Kasuk easily run out of mana? Marino keeps monitoring him, and Kasuk is still running and moving fast. Marino tells him that Kasuk has been moving for quite a while and asks about his body's condition. While continuing to move, Kasuk tells her that he is fine, and now he has a problem in knowing his own limit. He does not know whether this training of his is too weak or stiff, or maybe the training is not enough. Because of that, he has another worry, and he feels there is still something else he can do. Marino lets out a thoughtful tone and comments that what Kasuk says has some truth. She then suggests Kasuk to try spreading the fibers of his scarf and making a shield from the scarf. Kasuk for a moment is puzzled by the suggestion, but he then tries it and uses strengthening magic to control the fibers of his scarf, until finally his scarf spreads, lengthens, and wraps around each other until it finally becomes a fan-shaped shield. He then approaches her and explains that the shield has many shapes, so he is curious whether Kasuk visualized his shield with the right shape and construction in his head when making it. Hearing the complex explanation makes Kasuk slightly surprised and lets out a confused tone. Without warning, Marino points her hand and shoots her magic while letting out her cute tone. And yes, Kasuk's handmade shield instantly shatters. Marino then scolds and tells Kasuk that a fan-shaped shield can indeed receive continuous attacks, but it can only block at one point. Not only that, its weakness, a fan-shaped shield cannot reduce the momentum of a strong attack. Therefore, Kasuk must imagine a shield shape that can spread or throw away the attack. She suggests he imagine it down to the smallest detail. Kasuk is quite surprised by Marino's teaching style toward him, but he still follows it. He starts closing his eyes and imagining as suggested by Marino. Finally, a shield with a sturdier and curved shape is formed, unlike the previous flat one. He feels the shield shape he always sees in other games has a curved shape, and he is sure that shape is to spread the attack. Seeing the better shape makes Marino smile and praise him. She explains that with this shape it will definitely be useful in battle. Hearing that makes Kasuk very happy and thanks her. Thanks to her help, now Kasuk realizes something important. The scarf skill becoming additional arms is not a normal attack skill, but a situational skill that can be used as a weapon to split rocks, but can also become an iron shield when he masters it. With an enthusiastic tone, he says that he is now stronger thanks to her help. Marino laughs happily along and comments that Kasuk is really a hard worker. She then comments again that with his current ability, she is sure clearing the deepest part of the academy dungeon is no longer a question for Kasuk. She is even very sure Kasuk will get good group members when school starts later. Hearing that makes Kasuk surprised, and with an awkward tone answers that he did not know about that. In a certain place, in a luxurious residence that looks majestic, a male servant stands in a grand room. In front of him are two female servants guarding the door. The male servant then informs his master behind the door that the servants have prepared what he needs for his long journey, and now he is ready to receive the next order. Behind the door, a long blonde-haired girl with long characteristic elf ears thanks her servant. She then touches a hologram button that turns off the soundproof feature in her room. She then stands up from a pool and comes out. Two servants immediately dry her body and help her put on clothes and style her until she is ready. Yes, she is the main heroine girl of this ManhwaCapped world, named Ludovine Mari Enjdure Trofel, the second princess of the Trofel Empire. Coming out of the room, she walks toward the hallway gracefully and accompanied by other servants. Looking toward the window, birds are seen flying. She mutters that it does take quite a long time, but finally the time has come. In that hallway, the voice of a woman calling the princess with the nickname Ludi is heard, showing closeness, and at the same time with the sound of iron armor rubbing against each other. Hearing the very familiar voice makes the princess very happy. She even starts running toward her and calling her full of longing. The person calling the princess is seen to be a woman in a maid uniform, but also wearing armor. She is Clarice, a combat maid belonging to the princess. The princess holds Clarice's hand and says that she feels calm if she is with her. She is also relying on her this time on her journey. Clarice nods full of loyalty and answers that she will gladly serve her. Clarice then promises the princess that no matter what happens, she promises to protect her. Ludovine Marie Enjdure Trofel, often called Ludi, is a captivating and graceful blonde elf girl who is the second princess of the king of the Trofel Empire. She is also the main heroine in the ManhwaCapped game story and is the character most favored by the developer himself. In other words, she is the strongest character compared to the other heroines. With her background as a descendant of nobility and the royal family, she has an elegant and dignified personality. However, she consistently has a harsh and pessimistic attitude toward men. Even the character Kasuk is often treated lower than a pile of dirt. She is also quite known for her sharp words, and as a result she has caused many victims until it became a new syndrome called Ludi syndrome. Although harsh and rough, when she has a close relationship with the main character, alias the players, her true nature emerges. She is very romantic and truly loyal, thanks to which the MangaCaped game became popular and attracted the interest of Eroge genre game players. Several days pass. Birds are singing on a bright and fresh morning. At Kasuk's residence, he has just finished packing his belongings. Remembering that today is the day he will try living together with the Hanamura family, namely Marino and also Hatsumi. Boxes are neatly arranged in the now clean room. He lets out a small sigh while looking around. He feels that everything is ready, especially since he has already sent his important items ahead. Not long after, the doorbell rings again right on schedule, and yes, Marino has arrived. While starting to carry his boxes downstairs, Kasuk greets Marino as usual. Likewise, Kasuk tells Marino with a smile that even though he is only trying to live with them, he is still impatient to stay together. After a few minutes of loading the boxes into the car trunk, the two of them get into Marino's car. There is still 1 week left until Kasuk starts at the academy, so he intends to train harder than before. The two of them start to leave. On the way, Marino invites Kasuk to take a short tour around the city. She is confident that Kasuk will definitely like it. Upon arriving at the city center, they walk together on foot. And yes, Kasuk is so excited that when he passes a shop selling items and weapons, he shouts with joy, like a kid seeing a cool toy. He presses his face against the glass to look at the items up close. His eyes sparkle, like a money-obsessed person seeing cash. He knows full well that the weapons displayed there are made of mithril, orichalcum, and high-hyirocane materials, which are high-quality materials. While looking around at other shops, Marino explains that this city has two important things: the Magic Academy and the airport. So with those two things, the city offers more than other cities. Almost anything they want can be found here. Hearing that makes Kasuk quite surprised. Marino then asks as they exit the shop whether there is any weapon Kasuk wants to try using. Kasuk falls silent for a moment while muttering that it is a good question. He knows that the most popular option for using the character Kasuk on the wiki is equipping 4 shields on the character Kasuk, turning him into an iron wall of shields. But for him who has played the game quite often, making the character Kasuk just a tanker would be boring. And honestly, he wants to fight using all his strength. The character Kasuk himself does not have a default or signature weapon that suits him, and that is a fairly fatal weakness. After the middle of the story, the heroines with their new weapons will start to stand out. The position of the character Kasuk is easily taken over by the heroines. The power comparison between them can easily label the character Kasuk as weak. And after being kicked out of the team, what awaits him is hard work days in the Magic Instrument Development Laboratory. And yes, he used to do the same thing as the other players. Because of that thought, Kasuk answers Marino's question that in his opinion close-range weapons might be the best for him, even though he himself has not decided what to use. Marino nods understandingly and explains that Kasuk can always keep training his attacks and defenses until Kasuk masters his skill. Marino then looks slightly surprised as she just remembers something. She reaches into her bag and puts a red scarf around Kasuk's neck. She then explains with a smile that she has finished sewing and repairing Kasuk's scarf that was previously thrown away because it was damaged. She even modified it and made it into 2 scarves of different sizes. Hearing that makes Kasuk very happy and thanks her. The stitching from Marino looks truly neat, like a professional tailor. After looking around, Marino with a happy smile on her face invites Kasuk to walk to her house, remembering that her house is not far from there. But not long after saying that, the phone in her bag vibrates. When she opens it, her facial expression looks slightly surprised and also disappointed. She then apologizes to Kasuk and explains that her work has suddenly come up. She promises she will return soon after finishing her work. Because of that, she asks Kasuk to wait for her and gives him an identification card labeled Hotel Hanamura. She then explains that they will meet again at that hotel. Besides that, the hotel is also one of her family's businesses, so the hotel staff will definitely serve Kasuk after showing the card. She also reminds him again to call her if anything happens, and hurriedly leaves in her car. On the other hand, Kasuk stares at the card for a moment. Remembering a little info that the mother of the character Kasuk also has the Hanamura surname. That is the only info he knows about his parents. After walking to the location of the hotel, Kasuke is immediately shocked beyond belief when he sees how tall the hotel is. He thought the Hanamura Hotel would be as tall as ordinary hotels, but he did not expect it to be that tall. He cannot believe it and is surprised, to the point he comments in his heart that the Hanamura family is truly different. Even when entering the hotel lobby, the aura and appearance are truly classy and luxurious. The flashes of light from the luxurious items often clash with his eyes. After showing the card to the staff there, Kasuke intends to wait and spend his time learning new magic from the book he brought. Just as he is about to start, a large explosion occurs right behind the Hanamura Hotel. The explosion, of course, creates a strong vibration clearly felt by the Hanamura Hotel residents. The visitors immediately scatter out in panic. In the midst of the panic and confusion, the hotel waiters and staff immediately evacuate the hotel residents and explain that an explosion occurred at the Annex Hotel located near this hotel. Hearing that makes Kasuke surprised. Seeing people scattering out makes Kasuke panic too. He immediately takes out his phone, intending to inform Marino, and then evacuate himself. When about to evacuate, suddenly a man in a suit goes against the flow and collides with him hard until his phone falls. And yes, his phone is accidentally stepped on and destroyed. Seeing that makes Kasuke even more panicked. He immediately looks at his phone and realizes that his phone is completely destroyed. Now, not only panicked, he is also confused about how to inform Marino if his phone is broken. But when he is about to leave, he notices a group of people in black suits instead gathering and entering deeper into the hotel while people are busy evacuating themselves. Of course, that makes Kasuke feel strange and suspicious. So it is natural if he thinks the people in black suits are the masterminds behind the bombing of the hotel next door. While following them from behind and secretly, Kasuke finally sees the people in black suits entering a room. At the same time, the voice of a woman with a tone full of anger is heard questioning them for their shameless actions. Hearing that voice, Kasuke feels surprised because he recognizes it. Still sneaking, he starts opening the door and peeks into the room. There, Ludi, Clarice, and also her male servant are seen being surrounded by the people in suits earlier. Clarice and the male servant stand in front of Ludi, protecting her from them. Ludi, who recognizes the people in black suits, frowns and asks in an angry tone whether they chose to betray her from the start. Seeing them makes a happy smile appear on Kasuke's face, not because of the incident, but because he can see Ludi's figure directly. And the angry woman's voice is Ludi's voice, the main heroine in this game world. Kasuke never expected to meet her at this hotel. Although feeling happy, Kasuke remains alert and realizes that their situation is in danger. He sneaks into the room like a thief without being noticed and monitors them. While monitoring, he just remembers that the people in black suits also appear in Ludi's story route as her enemies too. Then Ludi's firm voice is heard saying that she does not know at all what her betraying subordinates are thinking. But even so, she has Aurelian, her male servant, and also Clarice with her. Clarice draws her dagger, showing a body pose giving a warning to her opponents. Seeing all that, Kasuke becomes even more convinced that this situation is an incident from Ludi's past. Ludi in the main story of the game has trauma, especially toward men, and this incident is what caused that trauma. A trauma that makes her afraid of humans, or called anthropophobia. And as Ludi's story route progresses in the game, this past alias this incident will slowly be revealed, where she was betrayed by someone she trusted, and this was once discussed in a live developer broadcast of the game and made the viewers surprised and talk about it a lot. Back to the current incident, the atmosphere in the room now becomes even more tense. Ludi looks not afraid at all, remembering she has two people she trusts. But on the other hand, the people in black suits also look confident, as if they also have something that will make their plan go smoothly. Seeing this situation, even though he has only just heard about this incident, he is sure he is currently in the mentioned incident. Seeing how confident Ludi is, one of them immediately takes out a firearm in his hand, while threatening them to stay quiet and obey. Seeing that, with agile movement and without any hesitation, Clarice immediately charges toward them and swings her dagger, successfully handling one of them. She then asks Aurelian alias the male servant to immediately cast a protective magic to protect the princess. Aurelian immediately raises his hand, but his hand is aimed toward Clarice, which makes Ludi and also Clarice surprised when they realize something is wrong with him. And sure enough, a wind magic with strong propulsion is launched by Aurelian toward Claris, which makes her immediately bounce and hit the wall very hard. Even that attack alone is enough to make a combat made unconscious. Her body immediately lies on the floor with red liquid flowing from her forehead. Seeing that, Ludi immediately rushes to Claris, who is unconscious. She is shocked and disbelieving of what she sees. She did not expect Aurelian, her male servant, who has served the Troful royal family for years, to betray her. In a disbelieving tone, she asks him what made him choose this path, and she is sure Aurelian has his own reason because he has never done anything this evil. Hearing that, Aurelian grins in annoyance, saying that Ludi is still the same from before until now, a princess who is locked up and also naive. He is so annoyed he already feels fed up. He raises his hand again and aims it at Ludi, then uses the same wind magic until she is thrown back. Aurelian, without wasting time, immediately presses Ludi's arm to the floor, locking her underneath. Fear radiates from Ludi's eyes, especially when she realizes several firearms are aimed right at her head. Aurelian says a threatening sentence in a heavy tone and small laugh while his hand is placed on Ludi's neck, showing the dirty intention he has been hiding all this time. On the other hand, Ludi starts to feel afraid, unable to do anything. Her heart beats fast and her breathing is short. She can only close her eyes and scream in her heart, hoping someone will save her from that dangerous situation. As if that hope is heard by someone, suddenly a round table is thrown and immediately makes the men in black suits bounce back. They all scatter and are confused by the throw earlier. Looking toward the throw, a young man with a red scarf covering his face is seen running toward them. Yes, he is Kusuk. Seeing Kusuk running toward them, the men in black suits start firing their firearms. But every bullet that hits his body immediately bounces off, especially on the scarf part. Seeing that, the men immediately realize that Kusuk is using strengthening magic. Kusuk does not immediately target the men in black suits, but instead he dives and wraps Ludi's body together with Claris using his scarf. Ludi, who sees the scarf starting to lift their bodies, becomes surprised and panicked. Kusuk, while carrying their bodies, calms her by saying that he will not hurt them. While thinking about the next plan, Kusuk knows full well that in this incident it should be Marino who comes to save Ludi. But right now Marino is outside, and he has no other way to inform her about this incident. Moreover, the character he likes is currently in danger. Of course he will do anything to save her. Because he is curious about Ludi's condition, Kusuk turns his head behind him, only to find Ludi silent with a body trembling in fear and shock. Seeing that makes Kusuk even more convinced that this incident is what made the character Ludi have a phobia. On the other hand, seeing that Kusuk has already gotten the two of them, without hesitation they immediately fire their firearms, intending to eliminate the three of them at once. Kusuk immediately uses the scarf wrapping the two of them to create a shield protecting the three of them. The sound of bullet impacts is heard raining down on them. Kusuk admits that the character Ludi is his most favorite character. He likes her so much that he even memorizes her full name. He even knows the special song for that character very well. Besides that, he has cried many times when watching the ending or conclusion of Ludi's story route, and has completed all branches of her story route. Now he not only knows her, but knows everything about this character Ludi. Therefore, for him not to save her and let her story go according to the flow is not an option for him. The sound of bullet impacts continues to be heard behind his scarf. Even the sound of explosions from magic attacks is now heard. Now he has no view or sight of his enemies. Besides that, it is also very impossible for him to peek outside the shield just to see their positions. Worse still, the idea that comes to mind is to ask Ludi to use magic. But her mental condition makes Kusuk unable to rely on her fully. He understands the situation. Now everything is just a matter of time between them giving up or him running out of mana. Because he does not want to bet on something still unclear, Kusuk feels he must carry out another idea, even though he himself does not like it. Kusuk then tries to wake the unconscious Claris. Luckily, even though in a weak state, Claris regains consciousness when she hears Ludi is in danger. Seeing Claris opening her eyes weakly and breathing heavily, Kusuk then asks her to use protective magic while still pretending to be dead. He also explains that Claris does not need to use her magic for too long. Even a short time is enough. Claris is silent for a moment and tries to estimate it, before then answering that she feels she can do it. Getting that certainty, Kusuk then asks Ludi to do something. He also explains that before Ludi does her task, he will activate the mana inside his body. After that, he asks Ludi to shout this one-word Aegis. Kasuk explains again that Ludi only needs to shout that word, and next what he needs is light magic or light from Ludi, and tells her that they will start this plan on the count of 10. Hearing that, Ludi freezes for a moment in confusion and amazement, before then with a panicked and confused tone questioning the use of beginner magic in such a critical situation. Kasuk does not answer her and only affirms that after Ludi does it, he will handle the rest somehow later. Because they are in a desperate state, the three of them start preparing their respective tasks. Clara starts chanting her spell targeted at Ludi as the one activating her protective magic, while still pretending to be dead, as does Ludi, who starts gathering her courage. Exactly on the count of 10, where the shooting of the men in black suits stops, Kasuk immediately cancels his scarf shield. At the same time, the men in black suits are surprised and confused by Kasuk's plan. Kasuk then immediately pulls Ludi's arm and tells her to do it now. With the help of his mana activation, Ludi and Kasuk immediately raise their hands, and when Ludi shouts the word Aegis, a magic circle appears surrounding the bodies of the three of them. On the other hand, Claris, who sees her magic working normally, lets out a sigh of relief. Seeing that the defensive magic is already in place, Kasuk starts running away from the two of them. Seeing Kasuk's action makes the men in black suits confused and panicked. But one of them tells his comrades to ignore Kasuk and focus on getting their target Ludi. Kasuk has already guessed their action of targeting Ludi. Precisely because of that, he will use the opportunity to be in their blind spot. His plan is simple: surprise the enemy and then win the fight. Therefore, when Kasuk is right behind them, Kasuk has already grabbed 2 tables using his scarf and immediately gives a signal to Ludi to use her light magic. Ludi nods understandingly and immediately uses her beginner magic. And yes, it is very effective because the men in suits are looking toward Ludi. As a result, when the light magic appears, they all immediately fall silent because they are dazzled and blind for a moment. Not wanting to waste the opportunity, Kasuk immediately charges and uses the tables held by his scarf to hit them all blindly. Aurelian is seen still conscious after being hit by the table earlier, and with annoyance starts preparing to shoot his magic at Kasuk. But Kasuk has already noticed, and with one punch from his hardened scarf immediately knocks him down on the spot. The men in black suits now lie on the floor. Diligently, Kasuk drags their unconscious bodies to one spot. Then he takes the tablecloth lying around and channels his mana and strengthening magic into the cloth. Throwing the cloth over the pile of the men in black suits' bodies, Kasuk immediately wraps them using the tablecloth that has been hardened as hard as iron. With that, the incident is resolved. Seeing the traitors captured makes Ludi very happy. Ludi then approaches Kasuk with a happy smile on her face. She comments that she cannot believe Kasuk could defeat them all by himself. Her smile becomes very happy and gentle, her cheeks slightly red as Ludi feels a sense of admiration. She then thanks Kasuk for saving her. Seeing that cute and innocent expression like an angel makes Kasuk's heart immediately melt. He chuckles softly behind the scarf covering part of his face, and answers that he only did what anyone else would do. Right after saying that, Kasuk's body immediately tenses because of surprise and panic. Seeing Kasuk's reaction makes Ludi herself confused. But when following the direction of Kasuk's gaze, which points downward at her body, she just realizes that the skirt of her dress is badly torn and showing something embarrassing. Only realizing that, with a red and panicked face, Ludi immediately runs behind Claris and orders Kasuk not to look at her. Kasuk also panics and immediately turns his face away and covers his eyes with his arm. His head spins in panic as he tries to find something to cover it. He sees his own scarf and intends to give his red scarf to Ludi. Whether bad luck or good luck, Kasuk's foot accidentally steps on his own scarf when he is about to give it. As a result, that makes him lose his own balance and fall toward the two of them. And yes, his hand lands perfectly on a landing it should not land on. Of course, that makes Ludi scream in embarrassment and Claris annoyed because of Kasuk's action just now. On the other hand, Kasuk immediately runs away while apologizing after he gives his scarf to Ludi. While running, Kasuk feels happy and confused at the same time with the situation earlier. Because that is the luck that should have been obtained by the protagonist, but somehow it is him who gets it. Time passes and the day is already night. Not far from the Hanamura Hotel, Marino finally arrives there. She immediately gets out of the car and approaches Kasuk with great worry and apologizes for coming late. She then explains that she has heard the news about the terrorist attack on her hotel. The incident is indeed horrifying, but she is very grateful Kasuk is okay. She also scolds him not to do anything reckless like that again, hearing that Kasuk can only laugh awkwardly and apologize to her for making her worry. Although she scolds him, Marino still praises him with a smile, saying that his action earlier was an extraordinary effort. Especially the girl Kasuk saved is the princess of the Trophal Kingdom. She plans to enter Tsukuyami Academy, too, just like Kasuk later. Hearing that, Kasuk pretends to be surprised, so he stays on the main story flow. Marino then also tells him that Ludi, and also her servant Claris, told her that they want to properly introduce themselves to Kasuk. This time Kasuk is genuinely surprised. He cannot believe Ludi will meet him again this soon. Deep in his heart, he hopes they will not make him responsible for the luck earlier. Not long after, Ludi and Claris arrive and are greeted directly by Marino. After chatting briefly with Marino, Ludi then introduces herself and also Claris to Kasuk with her serious gaze. An introduction that is a bit strange as a thank you. Even Marino, who sees it, looks confused and amazed. Ludi, who wraps the torn part of her dress using the scarf given by Kasuk, then bows together with Claris while thanking him once again for saving her. Kasuk looks awkward and his face reddens because of the thank you. He also awkwardly answers that the two of them do not need to think about it. He should be the one apologizing after that unexpected incident happened. Hearing that, Ludi's body jolts for a moment when discussing the incident. She then stands back up from her bow and smiles while frowning and says in a threatening-like tone that was an incident and unintentional, right? Seeing the smile that is clearly a threat, Kasuk can only smile, and in his heart he feels horrified, but still feels her angry expression is cute. Claris then takes out a rolled message from the king in this modern world and explains that the king has given a thank you letter to him addressed to Kasuk. Hearing that, of course, makes Kasuk happy. Ludi then says in a worried tone that there is one more important thing she wants to tell Kasuk. Claris continues her words that this incident was also planned by a group from their country that has cooperated with the evil church leader. She is very sure incidents like this will end, besides that they also have not found even one perpetrator in every incident that has occurred, and with this situation at the academy the princess will definitely be in danger. Hearing that, Kasuk falls silent. He understands that what Claris means is the evil cult group in the ManhwaCapped game story, and is also the main enemy and center of the problem in Ludi's route. With this event, he realizes he has changed the main story quite drastically. He only hopes everything still goes according to the main story. Marino then joins in commenting that she also heard rumors about the issue that the church has sent spies to the academy. She also knows that the church always monitors the Hanamura family. That is why Kasuk will now also become their surveillance target. Hearing that makes Kasuk very surprised, because he suddenly becomes their target. Claris also explains that Kasuk has saved the princess. In other words, Kasuk is now considered an obstacle by the church because he hindered their plan. Hearing that, Kasuk's body tenses in surprise. He did not expect the change to be this big. In a guilty tone, Claris explains again that the two of them owe Kasuk a debt of gratitude for saving them, and when an emergency comes she will of course protect the princess. But at the same time she also hopes to be able to protect Kasuk. Even so, she also understands if her power is divided into two when fighting, because protecting the princess and Kasuk at the same time, then she cannot guarantee she can protect both of them properly, unless they know the tactics or strategies the enemy will use next. Hearing that, Marino falls silent, thinking while nodding understandingly at Claris's explanation just now. Before then, Marino walks over to Ludi and holds her hand while smiling. She then gives a suggestion to them to stay with them as a guarantee of their safety. Hearing that, of course, makes the three of them surprised. When the two of them are surprised because they feel happy, it is different with Kasuk, who is surprised because of panic. He did not expect everything would end up like this. Even Ludi staying with Marino alone has already deviated far from the main story. Kasuk tries to reject the idea by explaining in a panicked tone that in his opinion, maybe letting girls and teenage boys under the same roof is not a good idea. Marino casually answers that everything will be fine because both she and her daughter Hatsumi will also be there. Besides that, according to her, this way is the best to protect Ludi and Kasuk at the same time. Hearing that, Kasuk can only accept it awkwardly. On the other hand, Ludi and Claris look very grateful for the suggestion. Claris says with a grateful smile on her face that she knows Marino and also Hatsumi are more than enough to protect the two of them, and there is nothing for her to worry about. Hearing her agreement makes Marino smile too. She also comments that her daughter will definitely be happy to see Clarice again after so long not meeting. Clarice nods enthusiastically and says that she has a debt of thanks to her for her efforts that now make her understand a little about the basics of magic. Hearing that makes Kasuk slightly surprised and amazed about Clarice's relationship with Hatsumi, because he just heard about that relationship. Not long after, Ludi, who has just finished getting a call from her father, tells Marino that she has just gotten a positive answer from her father and accepts Marino's offer very openly. The news makes Marino smile widely. Ludi explains that the two of them will join Marino's residence a few days before she enters the academy. Marino nods understandingly and comments that the new life at the academy is truly making her curious. Ludi nods with a happy smile, agreeing with Marino's opinion just now. Seeing their smooth conversation makes Kasuk think again about the main story flow in his game, where Ludi should appear somehow later at school. But clearly this incident is what will be the reason for her coming to the academy. But he also understands that with this meeting they could end up going to the academy together. Suddenly, in a firm tone, Marino warns Kasuk to make sure to live harmoniously with Ludi and also Clarice at her house later, and she also forbids any naughty things there. Hearing that makes Kasuk surprised to the point he immediately coughs. An impossible request to fulfill remembering this is in Eroge world. While following the three of them from behind, Kasuk mutters to himself. Honestly, he feels very happy because he can live together with Ludi and also Clarice her servant, but he also feels worried because he does not know how far this will change his future. Besides that, even before the main story starts, strange things like the sudden appearance of heroines from various directions, even all scenarios and plots appear that he never knew before. Thinking about that makes Kasuk slightly surprised and think of one more heroine he feels he could meet before the main story starts. Yes, the girl dressed as a Miko, who is none other than Mizumori Yukine. The next morning, Kasuk and Marino finally arrive at the Hanamura residence. Kasuk's eyes sparkle with admiration and excitement the moment he reaches there. He feels that Marino's house is extraordinary even though its appearance looks ordinary. But that is precisely what makes it extraordinary after seeing everything related to the Hanamura family always being in the extraordinary zone. Seeing his smile and sparkling eyes makes Marino happy too, and she asks Kasuk to treat her house like his own. The two of them finally enter the house. Marino greets her daughter, who is already there, while telling her that she has come home and brought Kasuk along. Hatsumi is seen with her flat facial expression and a slightly shy look welcoming her mother, who has just returned. Kasuk is so excited because his new life will begin right here. Questions like, how do you approach that beautiful figure? Are common questions that always cross the protagonist's mind in Eroge game stories, while for the players the worry is about money and also the seller. In Eroge games, most games have various versions, and usually one version costs around $100 to $200 or about 1,600,000 rupiah. That is why Eroge is an expensive hobby. After the money issue is resolved, the main problem arises, which is the seller. Not all stores that sell Eroge games sell the game's bonuses, and in fact those bonuses are the most important thing when buying an Eroge game. When buying, players have to choose and look for a store that sells the bonuses, and when playing they also have to choose again which heroine they like the most. Not rarely when they play the Eroge game demo version, it ends up being very different when the full version is released. It is so bad that quite a few players get trauma from that difference, including Kasuk himself, but even so, those Eroge games are usually still considered top-tier category games. Then usually in Eroge games, there will be characters burdened with various situations. For example, the character Kasuk here, having a complex background, unique abilities, and now having a relationship with a new family. Kasuk himself hopes he can get used to this new situation, but he realizes that the atmosphere around him right now is so awkward. Kasuk is seen sitting on the dining table chair, and Hatsumi sitting across from him. While waiting for Marino to finish cooking breakfast, Hatsumi does not move at all from earlier. Even when Kasuk tries to start a conversation, Hatsumi does not respond at all. She is truly like a robot without emotions that has run out of battery. Kasuk admits that Hatsumi is really beautiful. Even so, he himself cannot guess what is on her mind. Because he is fed up with the awkwardness between them, Kasuk forces himself to start the conversation. He suddenly stands up, and in a loud tone while holding back his embarrassment, he starts introducing himself to Hatsumi. After introducing himself, there is no answer at all. When he glances toward Hatsumi, she is still completely silent, which instantly makes Kasuk lose all his spirit. Seeing that Kasuk now understands why the character Kasuk chose to stay in the dormitory rather than at the Hanamura residence. For him, the energetic nature of the character Kasuk and Hatsumi's calm nature are like water and oil that are hard to mix. If he had not realized he is in the MagiX world, he definitely would not have been able to endure this awkwardness. Because of that, he can only hope that his relationship with Hatsumi will not stay awkward like this forever. Not long after, the aroma of cooking fills the entire room, and at the same time Marino comes with her apron carrying 2 plates of food. With a smile on her face, she serves the food, seeing that Hatsumi remains flat as usual. But not Kasuk, who is so excited when he sees Marino's cooking, remembering that he can now taste food directly made by his favorite character. Not stopping there, Marino also takes out other food like grilled turkey chicken, while explaining that they must celebrate Kasuk's move to their house. She also asks Kasuk not to hold back and eat as much as he wants. The smile on Kasuk's face grows even wider with joy. He thanks her and expresses his happiness. Tasting one of the dishes, Kasuk smiles widely again and comments that the food is really delicious. He feels that the food is the most delicious he has ever enjoyed. Hearing the praise makes Marino smile happily and call Kasuk a flatterer with his compliments. Kasuk comments again that the carriage alias fried chicken made by Marino is really good. Hearing that, Marino casually explains that her carriage is not made from chicken directly, but from blood-horned rabbit meat. Hearing that, Kasuk is immediately startled because he did not expect the food to be made from monster meat. Now his gaze on the food changes from excited to slightly doubtful. He did not expect the day he would eat monster meat to come this soon. Marino then says that she made Kasuk's favorite food based on her guess, and she has also made her daughter's favorite food. Several plates near Hatsumi are seen to contain only food that is generally for children, like omelet rice and Japanese-style hamburger mixed with yakisoba. When about to enjoy the food, Kasuk remembers something and asks Marino about his condition to Hatsumi. Marino answers with a smile that Kasuk does not need to worry because she has already told her about Kasuk's latest condition and status, which is that there is a possibility he has become a targeting Ludi. Hearing that makes Kasuk happy and thanks her. While still smiling, Marino tells her daughter to live harmoniously with Kasuk. She also explains that he is also a hard-working child. He never skips his daily magic training. Hearing about magic makes Hatsumi slightly surprised. She asks about it to Kasuk with her flat expression and tone, why Kasuk trains so hard for that. Kasuk laughs awkwardly at first, before then answering proudly that he wants to sharpen his magic as often as possible before school starts, and for that he has decided to do anything until that time comes. After giving that ambitious answer, yes, Hatsumi's reaction is still the same silence as before. Hearing the explanation, Marino tells him that her house has a library containing many types of magic books, and there is also a research room adjacent to the strengthening room. Besides that, there is also a beautiful waterfall behind their house, a good place for Kasuk to train there. Hearing the word waterfall makes Kasuk surprised. He remembers something related to a surprising place. Not long after explaining that, Marino's phone rings. She picks up the call and answers it. After a while, Marino, with a slightly sad tone, apologizes and explains that she has to leave immediately because she has been called. Hearing that makes Kasuk surprised again and somewhat disappointed because he cannot eat with her. Even Marino sighs in disappointment and comments that she also hoped to spend more time with them. She then goes to her room and puts on her uniform. Before leaving, she asks her daughter to take over for her in showing Kasuk around the house, and she also asks her to be a good older sister for Kasuk. Hearing the words older sister makes Hatsumi slightly surprised and her face reddens, as if she feels happy because the thing she has been dreaming of has now come true. Hatsumi sees her mother off as usual. Marino also tells her daughter that she will try to come home as soon as possible. On the other hand, Kasuk looks panicked and disappointed. He panics because he now has to endure the awkward atmosphere with the always silent Hatsumi. Right after Marino leaves, Hatsumi suddenly turns her head quickly toward Kasuk and immediately calls his name directly. Hearing that makes Kasuk's heart almost jump, especially when she calls him by his first name. Hatsumi then climbs the stairs and tells Kasuk that she will show him around the house, so follow this, Wani-chan. Hearing Hatsumi suddenly call herself Wani-chan makes Kasuk even more surprised. Even when Kasuk follows her upstairs, Hatsumi does not say anything except when they arrive. Seeing that, Kasuk feels both happy and surprised because the two of them do not need much time to become close like this. Even so, Kasuk feels lucky because at least their relationship will no longer be stiff. Entering the room pointed out by Hatsumi, it is seen to be a bedroom, complete with a bed, study desk, small table, TV, window, AC, and other useful things. Truly like hotel facilities. Hatsumi then explains that it is now Kasuk's room, seeing all that makes Kasuk smile in amazement at how complete the bedroom is. Hatsumi then returns to the hallway and points toward the two doors at the end of the hallway, and explains that at the end there are her room and her mother's room. Hearing that makes Kasuk even more excited, to the point he asks in an excited tone about Marino's room. He then comments in the same tone that he is really excited because he will be living with them. But on the other hand, Hatsumi, who hears that, immediately falls silent when Kasuk is so excited while mentioning her mother's name. She innocently asks whether Kasuk is the type of man who likes older women. That question immediately makes Kasuk fall silent in surprise. Hatsumi admits that her mother is really beautiful. She can even easily be misunderstood because she looks like a student. That is why her mother is actually older than Kasuk. She then throws out her guess again in her innocent tone and expression, whether Kasuk came to their house to get the chance to become her new father. Hearing that, Kasuk becomes even more surprised. He immediately denies her guess and admits that Marino is really his type, but he still has no such intention. Hearing that, Kasuk just realizes that Marino's husband, alias Hatsumi's father, has the status of having been killed. From the game developer's official website, the developer wrote that they had thought of and prepared a heavy background for the character Hatsumi, but the adult figure alias her father made them immediately cancel it. And yes, in the end, her father was made to be killed, and Hatsumi has a story to continue her father's research. Actually, the protagonist or main character alias Iori, he will learn some unique magic from Hatsumi, and that is still a long time away from happening. Even though Kasuk and Iori are destined to become best friends, Kasuk does not want to lose to him. That is because during the battle at the Hanamura Hotel, it made him realize several important things. First, he needs to do something about his own weakness, where he has difficulty knowing the enemy's position when using his scarf to protect himself. He has the desire to be able to see through things. That is because when he is in a defensive position, he is truly blind to his surroundings. The skill, the mind's eye, or clairvoyance, would definitely be useful in that position. And the second thing is about long-range attacks. His ability to control the scarf flexibly has a weakness against long-range attacks. Even though he has been thinking of ways to deal with it all this time, it is still quite difficult for him to do it in actual combat. Marino also previously warned him about that weakness, but because this is the Hanamura family house, the best place to learn magic, he will not waste that opportunity. Kasuk then excitedly asks permission from her to borrow a book that discusses space magic. He has been hoping to learn it. With her flat and innocent expression, she answers shortly no. That answer makes Kasuk surprised and puzzled. He then asks why Hatsumi rejected his request. Hatsumi, while turning her face away, answers in a slightly angry tone that Kasuk is still so stiff toward her compared to her mother, and she does not like that. Hearing the explanation, in a slightly panicked tone, Kasuk explains that Marino has ordered him not to be formal when talking to her. He also has no intention of treating Hatsumi and Marino differently. Hearing that, Hatsumi falls silent while glancing at him, before then asking him not to be formal with her either. Hearing that makes Kasuk slightly surprised. Hatsumi suddenly approaches him while touching Kasuk's cheek with her index finger and asks him to show more affection toward her and call her Wani-chan. It turns out Hatsumi only wants to be the reliable older sister figure for her new little brother, and realizing that makes Kasuk chuckle softly. He accepts her request, but he also refuses while bowing and explains that calling Hatsumi directly Wani-chan makes him a little embarrassed because he is not used to it yet. So he asks her to at least let him call Hatsumi Hatsumi-nizan. Hearing that, Hatsumi snorts a bit angrily before then letting out a small sigh and answers that she does not mind as long as Kasuk keeps using that call. She then asks Kasuk to follow her downstairs because she will show their family library. When they approach the wall and Hatsumi touches the wall that has a triangular logo, suddenly a secret room opens. Behind the open wall, a fairly spacious and comfortable library is displayed, and it is not just one floor, but 2 floors. Seeing all that makes Kasuk amazed. His heart beats fast with excitement. Full of enthusiasm, he comments that there is no house that has a library this wide. Hatsumi then tells him that Kasuke can read all the books in that room. Hearing that makes Kasuke a little happy but puzzled. He asks in a curious tone, "Isn't there important research and other important things in this library?" Hatsumi explains that important things like that are not in this room, so Kasuke can read everything in peace. Hearing that makes Kasuke excited. He then starts walking toward one of the bookshelves there. Knowing where the book is located, Kasuke then chooses to use strengthening magic on his scarf so he can take the book on the second floor. That way he can learn new magic while training his strengthening magic at the same time. Kasuke then sits comfortably on the floor while starting to read the book he took. Not long after, Hatsumi gives him a glass of drink and also a magic book. She explains that if Kasuke wants to learn space magic, then she recommends that book. She is sure the contents of the book will be useful for Kasuke. Kasuke thanks her and accepts the book. Hatsumi then, while smiling, slightly explains that she will also be working in this room, so if Kasuke has any questions he can ask her directly. Hearing that makes Kasuke happy. He can now understand Hatsumi's personality. Although from the outside she looks flat and hard to understand, actually she is very attentive. He then uses the opportunity to ask her about life at the academy, remembering that Hatsumi is a teacher there. Hatsumi then sits in her chair and innocently answers that she really does not have any friends. A heavy answer for a start. Even Kasuke is confused about how to reply. Hatsumi explains again that even so, the academy has so many extraordinary people. According to her, it is the best place if Kasuke intends to focus on academics and strength. At least she can definitely say that. She explains again that in the academy, the higher a student's rank, the wider the classes that student can take. Even for the best class of students, they have their own additional classes, and from there they can learn higher-level magic and various other magic. Hearing that makes Kasuke fall silent for a moment before then saying that he wants to take those classes, but it might be difficult for him to reach that point. Hatsumi is slightly surprised hearing it and innocently tells him that she can teach Kasuke about magic, especially since she is also good at magic. Kasuke laughs awkwardly and explains that getting direct guidance from a teacher would be really good and helpful, but actually his body is just not suited for using magic. Because of that, even if Hatsumi teaches him about magic, he doubts he will be able to use that magic well. He even admits in his heart that even if he learns high-level magic, he cannot hope the magic will be very strong. So according to him, exploring dungeons and other training would be more beneficial for him to learn rather than focusing only on magic. He understands that when school starts, their learning will focus on physical training, mana strengthening, and long-range counterattack calculations, and all those lessons Kasuke has already learned every day in his daily training. But by living with Hatsumi and Marino, he can learn magic from both of them, and most importantly, in this residence there will be no one disturbing like what appears in the game. He understands that right now the most important thing is opening a new area. Right when thinking about a new area, Kasuke is slightly startled as he just remembers something. In a somewhat surprised tone, he asks permission from Hatsumi to check the waterfall behind their house. Hatsumi explains that her mother has given Kasuke permission, so he can go there anytime. Hearing that, Kasuke smiles and tells her that he will come home before night falls. He then leaves quite hurriedly. Kasuke runs fast using strengthening magic on his body. He excitedly heads to the waterfall behind his new house. A waterfall is a location in the MangaCaps game that should be unlocked if you want to meet the girl who can be found there. He intends to meet that girl, even though he does not know if she is there, because it is still in the prologue part of the main story. Even so, Kasuke remains excited to meet her, the character who is very hard to strengthen and almost never not brought into the team. No matter how difficult it is to play that character, she is one of the characters who always defeats the strongest boss with him, and she is also the character he always relies on. Yes, she is Mizumori Yukine, the girl dressed as a Miko with her characteristic long-tied hair. When he arrives at the waterfall, Kasuke finds Yukine there. Just seeing her figure already makes him smile happily. Her captivating figure is now truly standing in front of him as a real human. Yukine is seen practicing her technique using a spear with a blade at the tip, or more commonly known as the naginata weapon. Yukine nimbly and skillfully plays her naginata before then she falls silent and takes a stance while staring at the waterfall in front of her. No sound comes from her mouth, only focusing on the sound of nature and the waterfall. When her focused mind knows the right time, Yukine immediately swings her naginata quickly. The small blade is able to create a strong impact on the waterfall, instantly creating many splashes of water toward her. Not stopping there, Yukine starts spinning, swinging, slashing every drop of water, heading toward her quickly and precisely. And those fast and very skilled movements end with a dazzling slash. Seeing that dazzling performance makes Kasuk even more excited and amazed by her, a technique that can truly only be done by someone who has trained for a very long time. Kasuk remains silent there without making any sound at all, but he smiles excitedly before then leaving again. His smile turns into a grin as his heart beats fast with enthusiasm. He witnessed her technique, and his eyes could not follow her movements at all. That shows that her skill in using the naginata is no longer that of a beginner, but an expert. Kasuk, who from the beginning wanted to use a weapon, now that desire grows even bigger after seeing Yukine's technique. He is really excited while thinking about how he can swing a weapon as fast as possible. Now questions arise in his head that make him even more excited, like how he can fight at that speed, what movements he will make before his enemy can move, and so on. He is sure that if he trains his reflexes, maybe he can reach Yukine's speed earlier, using only his scarf. Then another idea appears in his head. He wants to train his eyes too. He knows there is a skill that can make his vision sharper, and getting that skill is not a bad option for him. So excited that Kasuk immediately trains with his strengthening magic as usual until late at night. Kasuk is seen covered in a thin layer of dust on his body after training. His enthusiasm is still burning, but he also realizes he has to go home soon and train again tomorrow. Entering the house, Kasuk is slightly surprised when he realizes Marino has not come home yet. He finds the family room empty and thinks Hatsumi is still working in her lab. Feeling safe, Kasuk enters the bathroom, thinking it would be better to use the bathroom first before the two of them use it. When he is ready, without hesitation he slides the bathroom door, only to be shocked beyond belief. Yes, Hatsumi is apparently already there first, and is just about to come out. The atmosphere immediately becomes very awkward, and Kasuk tries to calm her. But what can he do? Because she is too embarrassed, Hatsumi immediately screams, and Kasuk immediately runs away while apologizing to her. Whether bad luck or good luck, Kasuk trips and falls to the floor. On the other hand, Marino, who really comes home at the right time, accidentally hears the loud impact sound from inside her house. Marino thinks something bad has happened there, so she panics and immediately rushes in and looks for the two children. But when the front door opens, Marino sees a scene that should never exist, where Kasuk is instead underneath while Hatsumi is on top of him in a position where her hands are pinning Kasuk's hands there. A position that immediately makes Marino misunderstand. Instead of getting angry, Marino instead looks excited. She even jokes by saying that the two of them have become close too quickly. Hearing that makes Kasuk even more panicked, and he tries to explain to her. On the other hand, Hatsumi, who is overly angry, remains silent before then taking the small basin she threw earlier and lifting it up, preparing to hit Kasuk with the basin that has been strengthened with her magic. Seeing that, Kasuk's face immediately turns pale in panic. And boom! The impact sound is heard very loudly until it comes out of the residence. Who knows what the neighbors will talk about? After all those events, Kasuk immediately does a dejiza to the two of them and apologizes. Hatsumi, who has calmed down, forgives him and will even let Kasuk off this time only. Hearing that, Kasuk can only thank her in his panicked tone. On the other hand, Marino can only chuckle softly and still tease them by saying that she is quite happy that her son and daughter are quite open with each other. There is even a saying that the more they fight, the closer they become. Hearing that makes Kasuk even more panicked and comments that that thought is quite wrong, and who even gave her that thought. A new day arrives and the sky is so bright. Marino then heads to the second floor and knocks on Kasuk's bedroom door before she enters. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Kasuk opens his eyes. He finds Marino waking him with her sweet smile. In her gentle tone, she asks about how he slept last night. While stretching his body, Kasuk greets her and shows how soundly he could sleep in his bed. In his heart, he feels this is a very beautiful way to start his morning with the sight of the beautiful Marino. Seeing Kasuk, who is so easy to wake, makes Marino praise him by saying that Kasuk is a good child because he can wake up early. Hearing that makes Kasuk slightly surprised, and he asks whether his older sister alias Hatsumi is still sleeping. Marino holds her own cheek and puts on a confused expression while explaining that she has already tried calling her many times, but she still does not wake up. And actually her daughter will never wake from her sleep unless she herself wakes her directly all this time. Marino then asks whether Kasuk is going for his morning training. Kasuk nods and says that he will train for a bit. Marino then tells him that breakfast will be ready after Kasuk returns later. Hearing that makes Kasuk feel happy and excited. After saying goodbye, Kasuk immediately leaves for the forest behind the house. As usual, he trains with his strengthening magic and controls his red scarf. But this time he trains in a different way, namely using his additional arms to carry several tens of stones as heavy weights. He then keeps maintaining his additional arms or his scarf to keep lifting those stones while he continues running while carrying them. Not stopping there, Kasuk also learns to control his scarf while doing other things like tying it to branches while carrying the stone weights. He even makes his own body jump and learns how to move his body more nimbly with those weights. And yes, Kasuk succeeds in jumping high and landing perfectly while still carrying the stone weights. Seeing his training go smoothly, Kasuk feels happy about it. Especially now he can train in the forest without having to worry about other people seeing him. He really hopes that with this situation's momentum, he can learn skills quickly. The skill he means is the strongest or OP skill, namely Mind's Eye. That skill is not just able to see the surroundings, but also has other effects like increasing the chance to dodge attacks, increasing crit rate, giving an 80% chance to dodge all types of attacks, having a skill with a wide radius, and also a special skill with attacks that increase hit rate. It is truly a strong skill because it gives various effects at once, and that also makes Eroge game players addicted and hope to obtain that very needed skill. Even he himself would be very happy to get a big chance to dodge and also increased accuracy, because both of those stats are very important for the end of the game later. In the game, that skill has a description like use your deepest eye, then you will know the enemy's location and the steps they will take. And with that description alone, it makes Kasuk sure that skill can solve his problem of not being able to see the surroundings when using his scarf as a shield. The easiest way to obtain this Mind's Eye skill is by getting Yukine and having her teach that skill. That is because the character Yukine already has that skill from the beginning. Like before, Kasuk takes the time to see Yukine, who is always near the waterfall. But when he arrives at that place, he does not find anyone there. Only the beautiful and lush forest scenery with the sound of flowing water. Kasuk is momentarily confused and thinks whether Yukine did not come today. Just as he is thinking that, suddenly Yukine's voice is heard from behind him greeting and commenting about Kasuk, who always works hard. That voice makes Kasuk let out a strange sound from how surprised he is. Hearing that makes Yukine laugh a little and apologize while explaining that she did not mean to surprise him. She then introduces herself along with her status as a student at Tsukuyomi Magic Academy. Being able to see and talk directly with his reliable character makes Kasuk very happy. He is so happy that he is immersed in his admiration until he forgets to answer her. Seeing that expression, Yukine innocently asks whether there is something wrong with her. That question immediately slaps Kasuk, making him immediately snap out of it and answer that there is nothing. He then introduces himself too, and explains that he will start school at Tsukuyomi Magic Academy this spring. Hearing that makes Yukine smile because she has now met her future junior at the academy. She then asks, if Kasuk is here, then it means Kasuk somehow is an acquaintance or has a relationship with the headmistress of the academy, namely Marino. Right. She then says that she is hesitant to apologize to him for this if she has already noticed Kasuk's presence since earlier. Because she is curious, she asks whether this path is his running route. Hearing that makes Kasuk quite surprised because she could know his running route, and that might be from her Mind's Eye skill. In a somewhat pleading tone, Yukine explains that the headmistress told her about this place. She hopes her presence here does not disturb Kasuk. She also asks, if she is not disturbing him, whether it is okay for her to keep using this place for training. Hearing that, Kasuk excitedly says he does not mind at all. He even explains that seeing Yukine training here makes him become excited. Hearing that makes Yukine smile happily and thank him. She also tells him that she intends to rest from her training, so she invites him to rest together with her and chat for a while. The sound of rustling wind and the sound of rippling water become a melodious tune that accompanies the two of them resting under a shady tree. There, Kasuk explains about his training that he does every day with the goal of becoming strong when he later enters school. Hearing that, Yukine nods understandingly, and that also explains why there are heavy weights in Kasuk's scarf. She then, while showing off her ability, explains that her special skill is manipulating this scarf of hers as she wishes. She can even change it into something like this. Instantly, Kasuk's rolled-up scarf immediately changes into two chairs, He casually sits on it, and even invites her to sit there too. Seeing that Yukine looks quite surprised but also disbelieving, she thanks him and accepts his offer, walking toward that chair and slowly sitting on it. Her eyes widen in surprise when she cannot believe she is sitting on a scarf that is soft but now firm. She comments that Kasuk has a truly unique skill. She then slowly touches the chair with her hand. Kasuk's mana sting is felt striking her hand, but Yukine looks relaxed and even surprised when she feels the flow of his mana. She comments again that she still cannot believe Kasuk can still maintain his strengthening magic after that training earlier. She also understands that changing something using strengthening magic requires a lot of mana. If she were the one doing it, she would have definitely run out of mana long ago. Hearing the praise makes Kasuk chuckle softly and comment that he feels honored to receive praise from the vice chairman of the Morals Committee. Hearing Kasuk mention her position makes Yukine slightly surprised but also confused. She innocently asks how Kasuk could know that. Kasuk, who knows based on his knowledge of this world, hearing that question makes him surprised. In an awkward tone, he explains that every student who is or will enter Tsukuyomi Academy admires the 3 top students of the Morals Committee. Besides that, Yukine's reputation is also quite good, so it is natural that Yukine is famous. Hearing that, a small smile appears on her face, and she explains in a humble tone that she is not that extraordinary. Besides that, everything is always above all. Yukine then asks him whether Kasuk is good at other types of magic. She explains that she prefers to use water magic. Hearing that question makes Kasuk laugh awkwardly. He shyly shows her his water magic, which produces a small water fountain from his finger. In an embarrassed tone, he explains that that is as far as he can use water element magic. Seeing that, Yukine's eyes widen, disbelieving what she sees. She even asks in a tone like her expression to confirm whether Kasuk was doing it seriously when using that water magic earlier. Kasuk laughs awkwardly while nodding. He explains that he is quite bad at using element magic, so he has a rather unique body condition. Hearing that makes Yukine even more silent, disbelieving, and surprised. Yukine then apologizes to Kasuk in a guilty tone and says that she should not have brought that up and should have been more sensitive about it. Hearing the character he relies on apologize makes Kasuk surprised and panicked. He asks her not to apologize for that. He also, while smiling, explains that Yukine does not need to worry about him, because all this time he has unknowingly already gained happiness. Because of that, he will work very hard, and he will stand at the top of the academy, and Yukine can witness that moment. Seeing how optimistic Kasuk is despite his limitations in something that is important in this magic world makes her surprised, and for a moment she is at a loss for words. A small smile appears on her face, and she then comments that with Kasuk's strong determination, she is sure the general duty, as part of the 3 committees, will be an easy matter for Kasuk. Receiving that praise from Yukine immediately makes Kasuk happy. Of course, the 3 committees are groups consisting of very strong students recognized as the strongest in the academy. Because of that, if he intends to become the strongest and aim for the highest peak in the academy, then he must enter one of those 3 committees. While smiling, Kasuk answers that he will work hard so that what Yukine just said to him comes true. Yukine nods appreciatively while closing her drink bottle. She then stands up while commenting that she has to return to training immediately. Because Kasuk is here, Yukine then invites him to train together with her if he is willing. She feels she might be able to help solve Kasuk's problem a little. Hearing that invitation is like water suddenly appearing in the desert, a golden opportunity that makes Kasuk very excited. He accepts without hesitation and then asks Yukine to teach him something. Remembering this is Yukine, Kasuk with a pleading hand pose asks her to teach him how to use the mind's eye skill. Hearing his request makes Yukine herself surprised, and she even confirms again whether Kasuk really wants to learn it. In the end, Yukine really teaches him how to use that skill. She brings Kasuk right to the point where the waterfall falls. Yes, they meditate there. There is no sound, no disturbance, only the sound of the waterfall falling and producing calming water sounds. Yukine is seen standing there while closing both eyes and pressing both hands together. She really looks focused in her meditation. But on the other hand, Kasuk, although silent, his expression explains everything. He grits his teeth and in his heart keeps screaming about the waterfall water that is so cold it could freeze his soul. He keeps whining in his heart, to the point he wants to run away from this training and go home. Suddenly Yukine shouts, calling him, and tells him that she can see Kasuk, whose focus has been diverted. She firmly reminds Kasuk to empty his mind and keep his mana active. Hearing that Kasuk feels this training is making him doubt it, he even asks in a doubtful tone whether this training can really make him use that skill. But Yukine immediately scolds him firmly and tells him to be quiet. She keeps asking Kasuk to focus his mind and imagine controlling the mana around his body. Kasuk cannot complain anymore and is forced to follow her instructions. He closes his eyes again and keeps enduring the cold that pierces his soul. He curses himself because he cannot focus his mind. He also cannot feel mana other than that cold. But from all that, the real frustration is because he realizes that right now Yukine's clothes are soaking wet. As an Eroge game player, he would usually be able to enjoy the view besides the waterfall itself casually. But this time he cannot see it because he has to keep his eyes closed. Time passes, and they are still meditating there. Kasuk's body starts shivering. In a freezing tone, while still closing his eyes, Kasuk asks his senpai whether Yukine is still beside him. Yukine nods and explains that after Kasuk obtains the Mind's Eye skill, he will be able to feel her presence even with his eyes closed. If that skill continues to be developed, Kasuk can even start feeling someone's movement and mana flow and perform anticipatory movements. Besides that, Kasuk will also gain the ability to see through things, including the future itself. But unfortunately, she has not reached that point yet, and she wants to achieve it too. Hearing that makes Kasuk surprised and annoyed at the same time. He feels that this skill is too OP to the point it can see the future. But what annoys him is that Yukine's explanation just now does not help him deal with the cold of the waterfall that is increasingly piercing his soul. Feeling Kasuk's attention diverted again, Yukine scolds him once more and orders him to sharpen his senses while continuing to feel his own mana. She even asks him to feel all that using his seventh sense. Yes, the seventh. The sixth alone is already confusing, let alone the seventh sense. Although Kasuk can only obey, he still grumbles in his heart. He has difficulty feeling or using his seventh sense. Not to mention the seventh sense, feeling his own mana alone is already quite difficult. Especially in his old world, something like this never existed. Kasuk, who has reached his limit, is about to complain to stop, but Yukine firmly rejects his complaint and orders him to return to focusing on his meditation. 1 hour passes. Kasuk is seen shivering with a sad and annoyed facial expression because he has been meditating for a full hour only to gain enlightenment from it. Hearing that pessimistic complaint makes Yukine comment that in her opinion Kasuk misunderstands one thing, where a skill or ability cannot be learned or obtained in an instant or even one night. Hearing that, Kasuk can only fall silent and admit it. Although doubtful, he understands that the character Kasuk is a character who can learn this Mind's Eye skill. Because of that, he can only trust that and keep trying. Seeing Kasuk's expression that looks like he admits her words makes Yukine smile. While drying her hair, she comments again that Kasuk still has time before the new student acceptance ceremony begins. Because of that, she suggests Kasuk be patient and keep making progress in his training. She will also keep helping Kasuk until he obtains that skill. Hearing that makes Kasuk excited and asks about the seriousness of her words. Yukine nods and answers that she will keep doing it, especially since it is also part of her daily training too. She then tells him that her father once told her that she could feel a monster's weak point. By mastering that skill, she can even change the perception of feeling when she touches the target. Because of that, she also wants to reach that level as soon as possible. Hearing that makes Kasuk even more excited and comments that it sounds really great and he wants to be at that level. Yukine smiles widely at Kasuk's interest. Kasuk remembers that the character Kasuk in the game needs 3 turns or days to learn this Mind's Eye skill. If converted to the real world here, the estimate would require several days to obtain that skill. But because Yukine is with him, he feels maybe he will obtain that skill somehow later. Kasuk then thanks her enthusiastically for helping him. After training together with Yukine, Kasuk returns home. Entering the bathroom, he finds the scarf he wore earlier is really dirty. He then puts it in the washing machine and washes it. While waiting, he feels disappointed because now he no longer has his spare scarf because he gave it to Ludi during that incident. Because of that, he feels disappointed in himself because when he ordered the scarf, he did not buy it in large quantities, and he should not have tried to save money. He feels that way because he does not know when he will get a scarf made of this material again. After changing his clothes in the bathroom, to avoid yesterday's incident, he knocks on the bathroom door first, making sure no one is inside. There is no answer from inside. He feels relieved and starts entering to take a shower. He feels that only the protagonist and an idiot would sneak into the bathroom again and again. After a few minutes pass, Kasuk finishes showering, and from outside the bathroom Marino tells him that breakfast is ready. Hearing that, Kasuk immediately puts on his clothes and comes out from there. He is so excited when he sees Marino's cooking that looks delicious as usual and praises her. Hearing the praise, Marino chuckles softly and comments that she got too carried away and made a lot of food for breakfast this time. While still holding a soup spoon and a small bowl in her hand, she asks Kasuk to take over for her in waking her daughter because she is still busy in the kitchen. Kasuk accepts her request happily and climbs to the second floor. On the way, he just realizes that he will be entering a woman's room. He hesitates whether he can just enter or what he should do. Because he does not know, Kasuk will just leave it to the situation. Standing in front of Hatsumi's bedroom door, he knocks on the door and wakes his older sister while saying that the day is already morning. But there is no answer at all. He knocks on the door again several more times. Because there is still no answer, Kasuk feels his older sister is still sleeping. He slowly opens her bedroom door and tells her that he will enter her room. And yes, Hatsumi is still fast asleep in her bed soundly. Seeing her appearance while sleeping makes Kasuk extremely surprised. His brain immediately wanders everywhere, but he keeps calming himself and tries to drive away those strange thoughts. He then tries to wake her by calling her before then shaking her body, so she wakes up, but Hatsumi is still asleep. Seeing that, Kasuk becomes even more convinced that Hatsumi is not the type of person who can wake up early. Once she wakes, Hatsumi instead moves randomly in a half-conscious state, and when Kasuk is still there. Seeing that, Kasuk panics beyond belief. He immediately grabs the blanket that fell on the floor and is about to cover her. But whether bad luck or good luck, again his foot gets caught by the blanket itself and makes Kasuk immediately fall onto Hatsumi. On the other hand, Marino, who has finished cooking in the kitchen, feels strange because Kasuk and her daughter have not come down yet. Because of that, she feels worried and goes to pick them up in her daughter's room. She knocks on her daughter's bedroom door and calls the two of them in a questioning tone. Because there is no answer, she then opens the door and finds Kasuk, who accidentally fell right on top of the sleeping Hatsumi because he tripped. And of course that makes Marino surprised, but she instead smiles happily. Different from her, Kasuk looks very panicked. Even Marino, as Hatsumi's mother, even jokes and comments in a happy tone that she is already sure that her new son has that kind of relationship with her daughter. So this must be celebrated immediately. Hearing that makes Kasuk panic even more and immediately denies Marino's misunderstanding. After that chaotic morning, the three of them can finally have breakfast together. Kasuk then helps Marino clean and tidy the dining table. When finished, Marino then asks about Kasuk's agenda today. She intends to ask for his help in shopping for today's necessities. Kasuk accepts happily. Hearing his availability makes Marino happy, and she then gives him her tablet containing the shopping list. Seeing the shopping list, Kasuk is slightly puzzled. He then comments to Marino that for the three of them, this shopping list seems too much in his opinion. Even though he is a young man still growing, it still seems too much to him. With a wide smile on her face and full of enthusiasm, Marino explains that Ludi told her that she has prepared to move to their house. So tonight they will hold a welcome party for them. Hearing that makes Kasuk very surprised and starts panicking, remembering that his parting with Ludi was quite awkward until it made her angry because of that unintentional incident. Kasuk then comments in a disbelieving tone that Ludi is really coming here. Enthusiastically, Marino says that she and Hatsumi also have not held a welcome party for Kasuk to their house, so she intends to do it at the same time and make a lively party. Knowing who Ludi is, Hatsumi then explains to Kasuk that Claris is a martial arts expert. She is also a good teacher, so according to her, having her here will be very helpful for Kasuk. Hearing that, Kasuk in a somewhat wary tone comments that he only hopes there will be no awkwardness between the two of them. Hearing that Hatsumi is confused and innocently asks the reason, Kasuk only smiles awkwardly and says that it would be better if Ludi and Claris forget that incident. But even so, like what Yukine said to him, that it would be better for him to have a second and third option in learning other skills. Hearing that makes Marino happy and clap because Kasuk has already met Yukine. Kasuk smiles widely and explains that Yukine will help his training for a while. Hearing that makes Marino excited and invites him to invite Yukine to tonight's party. Marino curiously and excitedly comments that she has to cook extra tonight, especially since Ludi and Claris always eat delicious food all this time. When Marino comments like that, Hatsumi suddenly joins in, commenting in her usual flat tone that she also wants to make something to make her new little brother feel happy with her. That statement instantly makes Marino freeze in surprise. She, in a somewhat panicked tone, tries, as gently as possible, to refuse her daughter's wish. She explains to her that cooking matters should be left to her, so Hatsumi can do other things like party decoration. Seeing that panic makes Hatsumi herself confused, especially Kasuke, who innocently calls her in a puzzled tone. Marino then approaches Kasuke when Hatsumi is not looking. She panics and whispers to him, asking him to keep watching her daughter and keep her away from the kitchen somehow. Kasuke becomes even more puzzled by her request, but Marino does not explain everything. On a city bridge road, various vehicles are seen passing by. One of the vehicles, there is the vehicle belonging to the Trofel noble family. In the back seat, Clarice is seen with a gloomy and worried facial expression. She comments about today's agenda, that thinking about her princess staying under the same roof with a man alias Kasuke makes her worried. Even though Hatsumi and also Marino are there, she still cannot shake off her worry. Hearing Clarice's worry toward her makes Ludi smile happily and tell her that everything will be fine. She reminds Clarice again about Kasuke regarding the incident that happened to them before, where Kasuke was willing to risk his life to save the two of them, so according to her, he is not a bad person. Hearing that, Clarice nods, agreeing with her, but still keeps her worried expression. Ludi smiles gently and comments that Clarice worries too much about her. Looking toward the car window, she smiles widely when she sees the city scenery that is already visible. She also tells Clarice about it to change her mood, that they will arrive soon. On a bright morning, Kasuke trains as usual in the forest behind his house. He trains together with Yukine. The sound of impacts and the hum of Yukine's Naginata clash, full of spirit with the red scarf that has been strengthened by magic. Every attack is met with another attack. Kasuke and Yukine show no sign of yielding even a little. Their gazes focus on every attack from their opponent, but no matter how strongly Kasuke counters, his offensive power is still inferior to Yukine's. Seeing Kasuke able to endure all her attacks so far makes Yukine admire and praise him for not being as bad as she thought. Kasuke smiles and praises Yukine too, but not long after, in the middle of their training, Kasuke's attention is suddenly diverted by Yukine's appearance. As a result, a clean attack from Yukine lands and instantly ends their morning training. Kasuke immediately sits on the ground while letting out a long sigh from exhaustion. He did not expect to lose to Yukine again. While chuckling softly, Yukine approaches him and gives him a bottle of drinking water. She says that Kasuke will definitely become stronger one day, and she is sure of it because Kasuke has strong determination. She then says in a serious tone that she also wants to become stronger, so she will not let Kasuke catch up to her easily. Hearing her goal makes Kasuke realize that Yukine's main problem is still the same as in the main story. Because of that, he really wants to trigger her awakening. Kasuke smiles widely, feeling challenged, and affirms that he also will not give up on chasing her. After chatting for a while, Kasuke realizes that time has passed quickly. He then stands up and prepares to go home and do the task given to him by Marino. Seeing him about to leave, Yukine comments that she heard the news that the princess from the Trofel Empire is moving and staying at the Hanamura residence today. Kasuke nods while smiling and explains that he has to leave soon to help. Hearing that, Yukine nods understandingly and tells him that tonight she will also join the party. While leaving, Kasuke invites her to meet again later at his house. Upon arriving home, he finds a cargo van parked in front of Marino's house. There are also many people from the elf race and dressed like servants. Yes, they are the servants from the Trofel Kingdom. Without hesitation, Kasuke helps them move the boxes from inside the van into the house. When entering his own house, Kasuke instead gets excited by himself when he sees those servants. He is truly amazed because he can see the elf race directly besides Ludi and also Clarice. Moreover, in accordance with the elf race's characteristics, both the men and women are all beautiful and handsome. While helping move the items, Marino approaches Kasuke and tells him that Ludi and also Clarice will arrive soon. Hearing that, Kasuke nods and hands the rest over to those servants, then joins Marino to welcome them. A classy horse carriage is seen arriving there, and then Ludi and Clarice get down from the carriage. Gracefully, she bows her body and introduces herself to Kasuke, Marino, and also Hatsumi. While smiling happily, she conveys her joy at being able to meet Marino and also Kasuke again, as does Marino, who warmly welcomes the two of them here. Ludi then returns the scarf that Kasuke had lent her before. She says in a polite tone and language that she must return the scarf to Kasuke. Seeing that makes Kasuk quite surprised because the scarf is still in good condition. Ludi, while slightly bowing, asks him to allow her to show her gratitude. Seeing a princess figure bowing to him makes Kasuk surprised and somewhat uncomfortable. He calls her with her honorific and asks her not to think about it. Hearing Kasuk call her formally, she then asks him again not to be stiff and to call her by the nickname Ludi only. Kasuk lets out a relieved sigh and nods. He also asks Ludi to call him by his first name only. Hearing that makes Ludi smile and comment that it sounds fair, remembering that the two of them will also be classmates, so she asks for his cooperation until that time comes. On the other hand, Hatsumi greets Claris, who is her former student, and Claris looks awkward, but also happy when meeting her teacher again. Seeing her bodyguard servant, as well as her personal guard being so close with Hatsumi, she explains to Kasuk that Hatsumi actually taught Claris how to use magic. Claris then explains to them that she has a mana capacity almost twice that of ordinary humans. Even so, she is quite bad at using that mana of hers. But she can be like this now. All of it is thanks to Hatsumi, who taught her until now she can use magic properly. Hearing that makes Kasuk slightly surprised. He is surprised about her mana capacity that turns out to be almost similar to his. Claris truly feels indebted to Hatsumi. On the other hand, Hatsumi is also happy and feels that Claris's achievement until now is her own effort and hard work. Even so, Claris cannot deny that she feels the Hanamura family always takes care of and helps her. She then faces Marino and bows her body. She tells her that His Highness alias Ludi's father also asked her to convey his gratitude for preparing an extraordinary room for a servant and a knight like her. Marino, with a warm smile on her face, asks her not to worry about it. She even asks them to consider this house as their house too and relax inside it. Hearing that makes the two of them smile, and Ludi thanks her. Not long after, Ludi's servants gather in front of her. One of them tells the princess that they have finished unpacking and arranging Ludi's belongings, so they ask permission to return to the kingdom. Hearing that, Ludi nods and thanks them for helping her. She also asks them to convey her gratitude to her father when they return there. Because the arranging session is finished, Marino enthusiastically invites them to rest inside her house. She also offers them a cup of her homemade tea. The two of them look immediately close and can chat at length together while walking into the house. On the other hand, Kasuk is slightly puzzled when he finds Claris still outside the house. He asks in an innocent tone whether Claris will not join them. Claris smiles and explains that they brought some of her personal items in several boxes, so now she has to sort them herself because they are mixed with the princess's personal items. She also tells him that while everyone is resting, she intends to tidy up the remaining boxes. Hearing that, Kasuk comments in a slightly surprised tone that in his opinion that is quite a heavy task, especially since there are quite a lot of boxes. As a man, he cannot leave a beautiful woman in difficulty. Because of that, Kasuk offers his help in carrying those boxes to her room. Hearing that makes Claris surprised and feels bad. She briefly refuses his offer because she does not want to trouble Kasuk. But Kasuk insists on helping her. While smiling widely, he explains that he knows the layout of this house better than Claris. Besides that, he can also train his strengthening magic at the same time. That way he feels he is doing two things at once, and it becomes very efficient. He then uses his scarf to pick up and carry two boxes on each side of his scarf. When he is about to carry the third box, he stops when he reads a warning sign to carry that box carefully. Kasuk thinks that inside the box there are fragile items, so he asks what is inside the box so he can adjust the way he carries it. Hearing that question instead makes Claris look panicked with her face turning red. She answers in an embarrassed tone while covering half her face with her hand that the contents are personal clothing. Because of that, she feels she cannot let a man carry the box containing those items. Hearing that makes Kasuk extremely surprised. He did not expect the box that must be carried carefully to actually be Claris's personal items. Seeing his hesitation makes Claris comment in a still embarrassed tone that for that box she will carry it herself. But because it is already near him and he is about to carry it, Kasuk feels it would be even more awkward if he backs out now. He says with an awkward smile on his face that he does not mind. He also promises not to look at the contents. Claris is silent for a moment before then allowing him while apologizing for making Kasuk carry her personal items boxes. Kasuk then picks up that box with a reddened face. When about to walk, he finds a pile of strings lying on the floor. Thinking of it as ordinary string, Kasuk then picks it up without checking and uses it as a hair tie at the back of his head. He then continues carrying the boxes while guiding Claris to her room. When climbing the stairs, Kasuk warns her to be careful when stepping. Claris nods and thanks him for warning her. A smile begins to appear on Claris's face. She feels the worry she has felt all this time because of thinking about her princess staying together with a man. But after seeing Kasuk's behavior, that worry starts to disappear. She feels she can be at ease if she stays together with him. She then follows Kasuk from behind as he climbs the stairs to the second floor. After a while, she notices something strange about Kasuk's hair. When she looks more closely, her face immediately sweats in panic when she realizes what it is. She is so panicked that she lets out a strange sound. Hearing that makes Kasuk surprised too, and he innocently asks what is wrong. In a stuttering tone from how surprised she is, and with a reddened face, Claris asks why and how her personal item could be on Kasuk's head. Hearing that makes Kasuk panic too. He immediately realizes and reflexively takes that headband string of his. Seeing that, Claris becomes even more panicked and asks him not to touch it. But everything is already too late. That string is already in Kasuk's hand. And when opened, that string is truly Claris's personal clothing. So embarrassed, Claris with her reddened face immediately does a dejiza or prostrates asking for forgiveness. She truly apologizes to Kasuk for making Kasuk's eyes stained by her personal item. She even starts panicking while holding back her embarrassment. She mutters to herself in confusion about how she should face Hatsumi and Marino after this. Seeing that makes Kasuk panic too, and begs her not to prostrate, asking for forgiveness from him. So embarrassed that her thoughts become strange, while holding her personal item, she mutters that if she is destined to live in humiliation, then she already has the string now. Hearing that desperate sentence in this inappropriate situation makes Kasuk even more panicked. He immediately approaches her to calm her. Again, whether bad luck or good luck, when he goes down the stairs, his foot trips and makes him immediately tumble toward Claris, who is sitting there. The sound of falling is heard quite loudly from the two of them. Kasuk is seen falling on top of Claris, who is underneath. Kasuk tries to get up immediately, but when he is about to move away, his hand accidentally touches something soft. He immediately closes his eyes and pulls his hand back. He puts on a calm expression, even though inside his heart he is going crazy. He then checks Claris's condition and finds she has fainted, whether from too much embarrassment or her head hitting the stair quite hard. When looking around, Kasuk is quite panicked because the boxes he was carrying earlier are now scattered. In panic, he immediately gathers everything so no one sees them. And sure enough, Kasuk's earlier fear happens. Ludi, who hears the sound of falling objects, immediately heads to the source of the sound. Apparently, the sound of them falling was loud enough to be heard in the family room. In a worried and hurried tone, Ludi asks about their condition after she hears the quite loud falling sound. Luckily, with his quick movement, Kasuk is able to gather all the scattered items. He smiles awkwardly and tells her that the two of them are fine, and they just accidentally missed one stair step which made them fall. Ludi briefly looks doubtful and confirms again that the two of them are fine, but luckily Kasuk succeeds in fooling Ludi and makes her return to the family room. On the other hand, Claris, who has just woken from her faint, cannot remember the earlier event. Yes, she fainted because of the hard hit to the stair step. The sun starts to set. The bustle of the city begins to calm. At the Hanamura residence, the sound of the front doorbell is heard. Hearing that, Marino smiles and guesses that the person outside must be Yukine. When she opens the door, it turns out Yukine has arrived there. Yukine thanks Marino for inviting her to tonight's party. She also gives a gift box for this party too. Hearing that makes Marino very happy and starts inviting her to come in immediately. After they all gather, Marino and Hatsumi together use confetti and spray colorful paper into the air. While smiling widely and warmly, Marino welcomes Ludi, Claris, and also Kasuk, who will be living together with them here. Hearing that, the three of them smile and thank her. The family room is seen with decorations already installed, livening up the party. There is also a dining table already neatly arranged with plates and glasses. Kasuk is seen inviting Yukine to join them. Ludi, who is amazed by the sight of an ordinary person's party, and Claris, who looks panicked because she did not help at all even though she is a servant. While waiting for the main event to be ready, Ludi does not forget to introduce herself to Yukine and vice versa. It does not take long. With full enthusiasm, Marino tells everyone that the food is ready. When they return to the dining table, Yukine's, Claris's, and Ludi's eyes widen, amazed and also disbelieving. Even Yukine directly questions whether all those dishes were made by her headmistress. Hearing that, Marino only chuckles softly and allows them to eat as much as they want. They all then sit in their respective chairs. Marino then says to the three of them that she hopes her cooking matches their tastes, especially Ludi's. Ludi thanks her for the cooking, and the three of them start putting the first food into their mouths. When the food enters, their eyes immediately sparkle, surprised, amazed, and disbelieving that Marino's cooking could be that delicious. Even Ludi comments in an amazed tone that Marino's homemade food is truly extraordinary. It can be said that her cooking is a rival to the chefs at her residence. Even Marino's food is more delicious than what is at her house. Clarice nods and comments that she is quite surprised by the delicious taste. Hearing that praise directly from Ludi makes Marino very happy, because all this time what she was worried about was the taste preference. Clarice comments again that she is quite confident with her skill as a servant in the Troful noble family residence, but she admits she has been defeated by Marino's flavor. Because everything is going according to plan, Marino then proceeds to the next stage. She takes out a bottle of wine from an ice bucket on the table. While smiling happily, she explains that she has a wine that matches the food, a special treat for the adults. Seeing that Clarice, who often deals with drinks, quite understands about wine, she comments that the wine bottle has a very good color. Marino nods agreeing. She explains that this wine has been quite rare to obtain lately. That is why she saved it for a special day like this. She also has fruit juice for those who are still underage. Marino then pours the wine into Clarice's glass first while allowing her to drink as much as she wants. In an awkward tone, Clarice thanks her because she is instead being served by the host. In the middle of the commotion of their praises to Marino, on the other hand, Hatsumi looks sad. She has been silent there from earlier. Before then, she suddenly mutters that she also wants to make something. Hearing that makes Clarice slightly surprised. She, with a smile on her face, without any bad intention, just wants to make her teacher feel happy. She then asks whether Hatsumi also cooked something. Hearing that, Kasuk innocently comments too that he has never tried it before and he wants to have the chance to try it. Hearing that, their words are like sparks on a pile of dry leaves that immediately catch fire. Hatsumi then immediately stands up and hurries to the kitchen while asking them to wait for her. Seeing that, Marino immediately looks panicked and wants to stop her, but everything is already too late. Marino's face looks truly panicked. To the point that Clarice, who sees it, also panics and feels guilty. She asks in confusion whether she asked too much of her. She then explains to Marino in a still panicked tone that she is still a servant and also a knight. So if Marino needs anything, she asks her not to hesitate to ask for her help. Hearing that Yukine is slightly interested in the knight matter, she then asks Clarice whether Clarice has been trained using a sword. Clarice, with a smile on her face, nods and explains that she also has experience in teaching too. Hearing that makes Kasuk interested too. He then asks her a question and explains that he has a skill he wants to learn, but according to him it will require a lot of time to master it. He asks for some advice from Clarice so he can speed up mastering a skill. Clarice is silent for a moment and starts thinking. She explains that mastery of a skill happens when the desire to obtain it reaches the strongest point, or at least that is what is said in some books. But that has also been proven because she also obtained her skill in a position like that. Yukine joins in commenting that in her opinion skill is truly an important thing. Kasuk nods agreeing. Marino also agrees and comments that in her opinion skill is something useful, especially with Kasuk's unique body condition. Hearing that, Ludi also comments in an innocent tone that in her opinion Kasuk's condition is similar to the condition of the Saint's founder, where people call him unable to use long-range magic too. Hearing that makes Kasuk slightly panic and comments to her that comparing himself to him is impolite. Kasuk realizes that he needs to be creative to maximize his potential. Clarice then says to Kasuk that maybe this will not be experienced by Kasuk, but her fighting style changed very drastically after obtaining her skill. Hearing that makes Kasuk slightly surprised. Clarice explains that previously she often used sword and also bow weapons, but after she learned how to use magic, now she uses a magic sword and also a magic shield. Hearing that, Kasuk falls silent again and comments in a puzzled tone that he still has not decided what weapon he will use as his main weapon. Clarice explains that learning many skills will open various branches of expertise that can be learned, so according to her, obtaining as many skills as possible will help Kasuk in the future. She even offers herself to give advice and give lessons to Kasuk regarding the skills she understands. Kasuk of course accepts happily, having Clarice helping him, and also Yukine makes him feel more at ease in making progress in his training. Time passes and the party continues. Marino, whose cheeks are starting to redden, is seen approaching Claris, and in a happy tone tells her that Claris's glass is already empty. Without waiting, Marino immediately pours wine and refills Claris's glass. Claris, whose cheeks are also starting to redden from being drunk, thanks her, and does the same to Marino. Their voices sound so happy when the two of them start to get somewhat drunk. Even when that wine bottle is finished, Marino does not hesitate to take a new wine bottle again. Seeing the two of them, Kasuk looks panicked and tries to stop them from getting drunk any more than this. On the other hand, Ludi chuckles softly when she sees the two of them. She comments that she feels grateful Claris can get close with Marino. Hearing that, Marino immediately turns toward Ludi and enthusiastically starts dragging her while saying that she has a fun game to play together, so they all can become close. Full of enthusiasm and like returning to her youth, Marino immediately takes out several numbered sticks and one stick that has a color at the end, and mentions the name of the game called the King's Game, or often known as Osama Game. Kasuk, who knows that game, instead panics by himself, remembering that among everyone in this house, he is the only man. On the other hand, Yukine and also Ludi look confused with that game. Ludi asks Kasuk about that game. Kasuk explains that Osama Game is a game usually played at parties containing a mix of men and women and is meant to liven up the party. The rules are quite simple, where the players must obey the king, no matter what the order is. Hearing that, Ludi is very surprised and comments that it sounds like a punishment rather than a game. With full enthusiasm because she is drunk, Marino starts her game and becomes the king in the first turn. She then gives her order that the person who gets number 1 must give a shoulder massage to the king. Hearing that, Ludi smiles in relief because she feels the order is not too bad. Marino then holds out her hand holding the sticks upside down containing numbers. She asks the players to draw one stick from her hand and get their numbers. When they all draw, it turns out the one who gets number 1 is Kasuk. Seeing that, Marino smiles happily and comments that she is quite lucky to be massaged by him. With that, Kasuk starts massaging Marino's shoulders according to her order. After a while later, the game continues and the number drawing session is done again randomly. Kasuk gets the first turn to draw his number. He intends to avoid becoming the king, because this game is too dangerous if he has to give orders. Whether lucky or unlucky, again Kasuk gets the opposite of what he hoped for. He gets the special stick and becomes the king. His face immediately turns pale in panic. He knows that in a game like this, the king must give orders that keep the game interesting. And among those orders are taking off, and also Pocky Game, or the game of eating one stick of snack by 2 people on each end. Seeing his king's stick makes Kasuk comment in a disbelieving tone that this is the perfect situation to make the women in this house hate him. On the other hand, Marino, who has been waiting for him from earlier, starts pouting and tells him to make this game interesting. Because she keeps forcing him, Kasuk does not have time to think of anything else and chooses to take a very standard order. He says that the person with number 3 must take off. At the same time, Ludi's body jolts slightly when she hears number 3. Yes, she is the holder of number 3, but again suddenly Claris immediately shouts, calling Kasuk, and stands up from her chair. With a reddened face and a full glass of wine in her hand, she in an angry and drunk tone says that she will take over that number and do the order. Tears start appearing at the corners of her eyes, indicating that she herself is reluctant, but she says that it is all for the sake of the princess, so she will do anything. She then pours wine back into her glass while crying and saying that she is also a woman, so she feels reluctant. Seeing her drunk behavior makes Kasuk confused about what to do. On the other hand, Yukine looks panicked and starts looking for something to make Claris sober from her drunk state, as does Ludi, who helps her too. But because she is too drunk, Claris starts going crazy and starts doing her order. Of course, that makes Kasuk panic beyond belief. Instead of helping, Marino instead watches while commenting in a happy tone and a wine glass in her hand that it is nice to be able to become young again. Seeing Claris's drunk madness and being in a position that could be misunderstood, Ludi, who sees it immediately, becomes surprised and scolds Kasuk while hitting him with the tray she is carrying. Some time passes, and that chaotic and crazy situation finally calms down. Claris and Marino are seen sitting slumped on the floor with guilty expressions on their faces. The two of them apologize to everyone for their crazy behavior earlier. Embarrassedly, Claris says that the effect of the wine turned out to be quite strong, so she lost her sanity, as does Marino, who keeps apologizing. On the other hand, Kasuk turns toward the clock and realizes that the time already shows 11 at night, because it is already late at night. Marino offers Yukine to stay over at her house. But Yukine politely refuses that she will go home tonight. Hearing that, Marino, while smiling and in her friendly tone, says that Yukine can move to their house anytime because this house still has empty rooms to stay in. Hearing Marino's words makes Kasuk feel disbelieving because she is still acting like that, just like when she was drunk earlier. Kasuk then tells Yukine that he will escort her home. Yukine thanks him and accepts. Because Yukine is already going home, Ludi then invites Claris to help tidy up this family room. Suddenly, Hatsumi's voice is heard asking everyone to wait. Her request, of course, makes everyone turn in puzzlement. She then, with her usual flat expression, shows a pot containing her cooking. But because her extraordinary food is shining brightly, she says that she has finished cooking and asks them to taste it a little before this party ends. Seeing the light coming from the food makes everyone except Marino fall silent in confusion, amazement, worry, and also half admiration. Even Kasuk feels all that. On the other hand, Marino, with her panicked smile, says that she chooses to refuse it and immediately runs away. Like the previous expression, Hatsumi then takes one portion of her cooking, and the light still appears on that small portion of her food. She then asks Kasuk to open his mouth. When the food enters his mouth, instantly he sees the shining and beautiful night city scenery, along with a cruise ship sailing on the lake. A calmness that appears after the most dangerous danger. And sure enough, Marino's panicked voice is heard asking everyone who tasted Hatsumi's food to stay conscious. Hearing that, Kasuk immediately wakes up with cold sweat on his face and drool still dripping from his chin. He truly fainted when tasting it, and that scenery was the scenery when his soul was floating away. Seeing Kasuk's condition, Yukine, who did not taste it, can only comment that Kasuk had a hard time here. On the other hand, Ludi and Claris also got the same condition as Kasuk and just woke up from fainting. The long and tiring night ends with Hatsumi's special cooking. The next morning, the sharp sound of a real sword clashing with a shield is heard. Kasuk is seen taking a step back, preparing for the next attack. On the other hand, Claris is seen in a defensive and solid position. Not long after, Marino raises her hand and shouts her order to stop that training. Yes, Claris is training and becoming Kasuk's training instructor. Kasuk, in an amazed and enthusiastic tone, praises Claris by saying that she is really strong. That praise makes Claris chuckle softly. She also praises Kasuk back by saying that she finds it hard to believe this is the first time Kasuk has swung a sword. Hearing that, Kasuk explains that he is very sure he can be quite skilled in using a sword thanks to the training he did with his senior, namely Yukine. Marino nods understandingly and says that in her opinion, strength is the foundation of everything. Claris also agrees with Marino and comments that focusing training on the basics can open the path to true strength. Marino, while smiling, suggests to Kasuk that if he wants to become strong, then she suggests exploring dungeons. But to explore dungeons, students must get permission, and that permission is given when he enters the academy. But if everything goes smoothly, then Kasuk will also be able to get that permission to enter various types of dungeons. Hearing that makes Kasuk even more excited and comments that he will really look forward to that moment. He remembers about his game version. There, every dungeon is separate from the main game and sold on separate CDs. But what he has been waiting for is a dungeon in the event on April Fool Day. He also feels that the famous dungeon in the MangaCap's world must not be forgotten to visit. Even though he feels guilty toward the heroines because they are ignored due to focusing on purchases, but all that feels natural because he has difficulty getting all those CDs. Yes, the MangaCap's game is truly sold separately for each arc and other features, and that is a rather troublesome sales system for him where each CD is sold at different stores. He has completed his task as a player and obtained all those CDs, which number 5 pieces. He clearly remembers every series of those CDs like Yaorakai Chizu, Tsukuchuya, Merchant, Taiga Horu, Kudamono Nahan. Even though each CD has the same expensive price as the game, but all that does not feel in vain because it has the bonuses, like exclusive pillows, official covers, official CDs, exclusive posters, and other items. He has obtained all of them, even some he bought online. At that time, he felt his order would arrive late as usual. But when his order arrived, it turned out everything was sent at once. Until he was overwhelmed by all those ordered items, so memorable. He can still remember that moment until now. When Kasuk is thinking about that, without him realizing, He falls completely silent, without moving at all like he is daydreaming. Because of that, Marino, who is near him, approaches and calls him in a puzzled tone. Hearing and snapping out of his daydream, Kasuk immediately becomes surprised when he sees Marino's face already close to him. Seeing his surprise makes Marino puzzled and asks whether Kasuk was daydreaming earlier. Kasuk, in a somewhat awkward tone, explains that he was only thinking about the progress of his training, where he now feels he is quite used to his strengthening magic. Because of that, he feels he wants to learn other things. Hearing his spirit makes Marino excited too. She then lends him a book she took from her library to Kasuk and gives advice to learn the skill called Mana Relay. Hearing that skill name makes Kasuk quite surprised. While opening and reading the contents of the book, he asks whether that is the skill that can make him transfer or share his mana with others. Marino nods and explains in her usual cheerful tone that the way it works is similar to body-strengthening magic and also recovery magic. Besides that, according to her, Kasuk can also utilize the advantage he has in the part of his abundant mana capacity using that skill. Hearing that makes Kasuk very happy and wants to learn it. According to him, Marino's thought earlier is a very common thought for a team when conquering a dungeon. With one member made into a mana battery, the other members will not need to worry about the problem of running out of mana during the dungeon conquest process. And yes, he now enthusiastically starts reading every page of that book. Marino comments again that in her opinion, with Kasuk's current condition, he will definitely be able to learn this skill without needing a long time. And sure enough, Kasuk immediately understands how to use that skill. Seeing that, Clara smiles in admiration and praises him that now Kasuk has become stronger. Talking about strong, she remembers that her master alias Ludi is now training under Hatsumi's direct guidance about shortening her magic chance. Hearing that makes Kasuk amazed. Marino explains in a teacher-like tone that the higher the magic power, the more important it is to shorten the chance. According to her, Ludi is born with talent in magic, so she feels she will become strong in the near future, especially since her daughter is really impatient as a teacher. Clarice nods understandingly and comments in an enthusiastic tone that her master alias Ludi also said she will give everything to be able to learn it. Hearing the words "give everything" makes Kasuk slightly surprised. He feels worried about Ludi. Based on their words, Kasuk feels that Hatsumi's guidance or training sounds merciless, so he feels curious whether Ludi can endure it. Time passes. The sun is still hanging in the sky. Kasuk returns home after he finishes his training. Everything looks normal as usual at first. But there is one thing different. He sees Ludi wearing her sportswear lying limply on the sofa in the family room. Her short breathing is heard, showing how exhausted she is. Seeing that, Kasuk only comments in a disbelieving tone that he could already guess the result would be like this. Hearing Kasuk's voice, Ludi lifts her face limply. Her face is somewhat red and her expression looks almost crying. She comments in a sad and limp tone that she did not expect Hatsumi's training to be this heavy. Kasuk can only chuckle softly and give her a bottle of drinking water while praising her hard work. Ludi then thanks him and accepts the bottle. But she does not drink it immediately, but puts it on the sofa. She says in the same tone that she cannot move from there. In a pleading tone, she begs Kasuk to help her sit up. In the end, Kasuk helps her get up from there. Ludi sighs, tired. She comments that her mana is really almost gone. Even because she is so tired, she can only move her body a little. Besides that, her body is now sweating and she wants to shower, but because of this great fatigue, it will be very difficult for her to shower. Hearing about her mana condition makes Kasuk surprised and gets an idea while saying that the two of them can use the mana relay skill. According to him, by using that magic, Ludi can recover mana while he can train to increase the efficiency of his mana expenditure, so he feels this way can solve two problems at once. Hearing that, Ludi looks slightly surprised and asks whether Kasuk already knows how to use that skill. Kasuk honestly answers that he just learned that skill. He also has actually tried that skill on Clarice before, but he could not know the result, whether it succeeded or not. Remembering the incident a while ago, when on the field, Clarice is seen sitting on the ground with her body trembling and her face suddenly reddening after Kasuk used his skill. Ludi is silent for a moment, considering Kasuk's offer again. She then comments that Marino and also Hatsumi are currently working. Moreover, Clarice is also out now, so she has no other choice but to rely on Kasuk right now. Because of that, she accepts Kasuk's offer just now. Hearing her agreement makes Kasuk thank her. He then asks permission to sit beside her and explains that for the mana relay skill to work, he must touch the target's body part. So he asks Ludi to tell him which body part he is allowed to touch. Ludi then answers by asking whether it is okay if she uses her hand as the medium. Kasuk nods and answers that according to him it might work. Ludi then holds out her hand to Kasuk, and when Kasuk holds her hand, she immediately makes a fuss by herself with her face reddening between admiration and embarrassment. Remembering that Ludi is his favorite character, Kasuk even stares seriously at the hand he is holding. He comments in an amazed tone that Ludi's hand looks very white and slender. He can even see that every fingertip is painted with pink like cherry blossoms. Hearing such a detailed comment makes Ludi herself feel embarrassed, her cheeks redden. She tries to look calm and comments by asking whether something like this is not normal. But because Kasuk is so focused on his favorite character's hand, he does not hear her question and instead continues saying what is on his mind right now, that Ludi's hand feels very warm and also soft. Moreover, it feels slightly sweaty and moist. Hearing that makes Ludi surprised, embarrassed, and also panicked. She immediately calls Kasuk in a somewhat loud tone. While turning her reddening face away, Ludi then says that she feels embarrassed if Kasuk keeps staring at her hand, so she asks Kasuk to finish it quickly. Hearing that Kasuk immediately snaps out of his thoughts, he immediately apologizes to her. Ludi explains in the same tone that something like this, if Claris finds out, this might become a diplomatic issue. Hearing that makes Kasuk surprised and feels this is quite serious. Because he does not want his good intention to become another problem, Kasuk starts the process of filling Ludi's mana. He holds Ludi's hand and stares at her seriously. During the use of his skill, Kasuk keeps focusing on the process while remembering the steps and his understanding again. From the information in the book, the mana filling method is quite simple. The first thing to do is to find the location of the remaining mana inside the target's body. The next step is just to send the user's mana to that mana location. It does sound simple, but adjusting the mana expenditure is a very difficult procedure. That is because the more the mana output is increased, the more mana is wasted. Besides that, there is also the option of channeling it in one go with a large amount at once, but of course a lot of mana will be wasted. After a few minutes, Kasuk asks about Ludi's body condition after he filled her mana. Hearing that question, Ludi looks puzzled and even asks back the meaning of that question. That shows that Ludi does not feel any change in her body, whether it succeeded or failed. And yes, Kasuk is also confused, but he feels the possibility is that his skill failed and thinks to try increasing his mana output. Without asking Ludi's opinion first, Kasuk immediately carries out that idea of his. That instantly makes Ludi surprised and her body jolts slightly. Her face is somewhat red when mana starts flowing into her body. At first she looks comfortable and tries to hold back the strange feeling she feels when Kasuk's mana flows into her. But suddenly she feels something unusual until she looks somewhat panicked and surprised. She immediately pulls her arm and asks Kasuk to stop his skill. She in a puzzled and surprised tone asks whether this is really how the skill works normally. She feels that his skill cannot possibly have an effect like this. Hearing and seeing her expression makes Kasuk surprised too. He is silent for a few moments before then laughing awkwardly and explaining that according to Marino the effect is indeed like this. Hearing that makes Ludi even more surprised. Her face becomes even redder, her breathing becomes even shorter. She is confused and also puzzled about what to do to deal with her body that suddenly becomes sensitive after receiving Kasuk's mana. She feels strange with Kasuk's skill, but she also realizes that Kasuk has no intention of giving this effect. But because she feels strange, with her still reddened and pouting face, she asks to confirm whether Kasuk did not do this on purpose. Hearing that Kasuk's face also reddens, and with an awkward smile on his face he answers that of course he has no such intention. He then tells her that he will try it once more. He keeps focusing himself on controlling and adjusting his mana output. But because Ludi's body is already sensitive, now even a small amount of mana flow feels very noticeable, even to the point that she lets out her strange sound. Hearing her sound makes Kasuk surprised. He feels that this situation is quite dangerous for him. While trying to stay calm and covering his reddening face with one hand, Kasuk asks her to stop letting out that strange sound of hers. Hearing that request makes Ludi herself become somewhat emotional and scolds him because Kasuk thinks she is letting out her strange sound on purpose. She honestly but embarrassedly explains that now her body is really sensitive and Kasuk's mana flow feels like it is tickling her body every moment. Hearing that makes Kasuk even more surprised and his face reddens. He even asks her not to say something unreasonable like that. Ludi is about to leave, but because Kasuk feels this is his chance to learn his skill further, he immediately apologizes and begs her to try it again. He explains that if he can focus, then he feels he can master it. Besides that, Ludi's mana is also almost full, and only a little more mana needs to be added, then Ludi can resume training again. Hearing that makes Ludi stop her intention to leave, because she hears that Kasuk can know about her mana capacity that is almost full. Kasuk also adds to convince her that his level is almost rising, so he will do his best so he will not become a burden for Ludi. He even puts on a pleading hand pose so he can try it once more. Seeing how Kasuk really wants to become strong makes Ludi feel touched. She also fully understands his desire to become strong. Because of that, she accepts his request, which makes Kasuk immediately become excited again and thank her. Kasuk explains that he now feels more confident, and because of that he will make everything finish quickly. Hearing that a smile appears on Ludi's face while holding out her hand to him again, she comments that she feels this time she can feel calm. But when it starts, the same thing happens. Ludi's body jolts again when Kasuk's mana is put back in. Even this time the effect is more noticeable. She tries hard not to disturb Kasuk's focus and tries to hold back her sound. She realizes that Kasuk's touch and his skill feel gentle, but for some reason now her body becomes even more sensitive. Seeing Ludi, who has been covering her mouth from earlier, makes Kasuk slightly surprised and asks about her condition. He also asks her to immediately tell him if something happens, and he will immediately stop his skill. Ludi becomes even more convinced. As long as she does not let out her strange sound, then everything will finish quickly. On the other hand, Kasuk realizes that only a little more mana is left until Ludi's mana reaches its maximum limit. A few moments later, Ludi is seen letting out a relieved sigh. She truly feels relieved because she can hold back and know how to hold herself from letting out her strange sound during the process. But on the other hand, Kasuk, who sees her instead, thinks the opposite. He feels puzzled because Ludi has been silent from earlier and thinks maybe his method earlier was not effective. Because of that, he instead chooses to increase his mana output. And yes, he again immediately does it without telling Ludi first. At the same time, realizing what Kasuk is about to do makes Ludi panic. And finally her strange sound comes out again. Because she can no longer hold back the incoming flow of Kasuk's mana, her body reflexively immediately jumps toward Kasuk, which instantly makes them lie on the sofa. Ludi slowly gets up from Kasuk's body and stares at him while pouting, and with a reddened face. Seeing the dangerous condition makes Kasuk panic. Ludi, in a heavy tone and breathing while still pouting, says that her body can no longer accept mana, so she asks him to stop it. Hearing that, Kasuk smiles awkwardly and panics. He nods agreeing and chooses to stop it for the sake of the two of them. But Ludi suddenly staggers while saying in a limp tone that her body cannot move again, but with a different reason from before. She immediately collapses back onto Kasuk's body. In the same tone as before, she asks whether Kasuk knows something like this would happen. Hearing that question makes Kasuk fall silent in puzzlement. Seeing that response, Ludi explains in the same tone that people say this skill has higher mana conductivity when more skin parts touch each other. Hearing that makes Kasuk extremely surprised. And sure enough, right after saying that, Kasuk's hand immediately emits sparks of light, and he feels his hand like getting a sting. Seeing that, Kasuk's face reddens and he smiles awkwardly. He apologizes and explains that right now he feels he cannot control his own mana. Hearing that makes Ludi panic too. Not long after, Ludi's strange sound is heard again. Finally, Ludi's mana is now full again. Kasuk also succeeds in raising his level. But now the atmosphere between them is truly awkward. Kasuk comments with an awkward smile on his face that he turns out to still have a lot of things that need to be fixed. On the other hand, Ludi is seen still lying on the sofa. She comments in a limp and complaining tone that now she cannot move again, but with a different reason from before.